Hello, everybody. Hi, how are you? I am Greg. Welcome to hellagregLIVE. Today's a very special episode. I'm very excited for it. You can find me everywhere at hellagreg, hellagreg.com for all your hellagreg needs. Thank you for watching on Twitch. Please subscribe if you haven't, or, follow or do whatever it is you do. If you don't want to watch on Twitch, you can visit hellagregg.com, watch the live stream there, and get all your information. Better yet, visit it anyway for merch. And there's a puzzle on there that I put for anyone who wants to crack the code. There are prizes involved if you can crack the code and be one of the first 5. I think is what I put on there. Today I have Jesse with me. Say hello, Jesse.
Yeah.
Boom. That's it. How are you, sir?
I'm tired, but I'm alive.
Tired but alive.
That's all you need to be, I've heard.
That's
what I read in the classified ad how I got this job. It was like, requirements, be alive. And I was like, yo, I am that. Yo, Hella Greg, let me get on this opportunity.
It was cool because I knew your qualifications. So yeah, by the way, tell the nice people where they can find you.
Perfectlycromulentjesse.com or cromulentjesse on some of the social medias.
Yeah, I think I even got that in here. Yeah, it'll work. Let's see. The podcast of this episode, if you want to go back and listen to it again, will be out on Thursday. The videos should be out on YouTube and or Facebook on Thursday. While you're here, don't forget to chat it up, earn some channel points, gamble them, do all that cool, fun stuff. Redeem them for neat stuff along the way. And yeah, that's enough channel promotion. Today, we are going to cover one of the saddest events in American history. Not only did it alter the course of our nation, but also the world. We are going to talk about the assassination of JFK. I do this every year. I forget kind of when it is because it just kind of rolls to the back of my memory. And one day out of the blue, I'll be like, dude, this time.
I need to start talking about JFK right now.
Well, this time, I think it had to do with Cold War coming out. Right, and me getting into the Cold War again and looking at all that stuff and then kind of rolling and working backwards to the start of the Cold War and the space race and all that stuff and where that even came from. And then I was like, JFK. And then I'm like... I should do something fun, I should do something with JFK.
Right.
So that's how I wound up here. But it happens like that every year. I think when we did, I talked about JFK on Serial Chillers once, or was scheduled to, or something. But anyway,
we were like, nah, save it till you got your own show, man.
But there was, I definitely forgot about it until it was ended up being around the anniversary of it again.
It's like your brain subconsciously reminds you to start thinking about JFK around November 10th.
Exactly. It's just like, hey.
About 12 days from now, you're going to really want to focus in, buddy.
Wake up.
Greg's a sleeper agent for JFK knowledge.
Right. They hit me with a numbers station. Ooh, that'll be a fun one. Remind me later. So yeah, we're going to talk about the assassination of JFK. I'm going to do my best to keep my opinions out of this, but when I do give you my opinion, I'm going to also do my best to be like, hey, this is my opinion. So I think that seems reasonable and fair.
I'll call you on your bullshit. You know I will.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean,
I don't reckon there'll be any, but if there is,
yeah.
Ooh,
so
there better not be.
There
better not.
I'm also gonna do my level best to not do too many John F. Kennedy impressions.
I have no problem with continued JFK impressions.
Problem is, I feel like it's going to wind up by the end of the night being
Mayor Quimby.
Diamond Joe Quimby.
Here's who has a really great JFK impression? Sidebar real quick. Howard Stern.
Really?
Every time he's ever it's not that I've heard him do it a million times. So he's been on the air for my entire life.
I like to think that Howard Stern's at parties going, "Hey, want to hear my Kennedy impression?"
But the few times that I have heard him do it over many years, not that I'm a loyal Stern, but he's out there. It's very easy to hear him. He's a solid JFK.
That's funny. That's good to know.
And Diamond Joe.
It's close to the same. So we're going to go through a little bit of hearsay, a little bit of proven fact, a little bit of stringing evidence together, and trying to make sense of the whole thing. If you want to chime in, 805-666-2513, feel free. You can jump in the chat. You can do all that cool stuff. Let's go. Let's do this.
Okay.
All right. So we all know who JFK is, so I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time by describing the man. What I will do is give you information about some of his policies, his backstory, and people that he may have crossed on his way to becoming a warning shot to anybody else who dares to enter that position of power. He made some enemies along the way, spoke out against the military-industrial complex, spoke out about nuclear disarmament, and spoke about a peaceful world where we worked alongside Russia and the rest of the world for a better tomorrow.
No, fuck those Roskies. Kill that motherfucker.
Yeah, you can't have that, dude. In fact, I have some sound clips for tonight. Let's see. I know I've got it on here.
Yeah, right. It's one of these.
Yeah.
As you no doubt recall.
Nope. That's for later.
Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty. This much we pledge and more. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
He wants to get back to the moon?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so. I think that was later on. So, November 22nd, 1963, JFK was assassinated in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas, while riding in the backseat of a limousine. He was seated next to his wife, Jackie O, and behind Governor John Connally and his wife, Nellie. Excuse me, Red Bull. There was also two Secret Service agents. Bill Greer and Agent Roy Kellerman was passenger. Bill Greer was driving. Bill Greer has been accused of the murder also. People said that...
Like it was like the backward shooting gun or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a little bit about this.
People said that he was driving along and he did one of these, like, over the back. And, I mean, if you watch the video, like, he clearly doesn't. He definitely looks, and I'm not saying he's not involved. I'm just saying
Zapruder film clears him of pulling a trigger.
not just the Zapruder film. There's others, and
angles.
I actually have clips of others that we'll show. But
Zapruder's just the one.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the Warren Commission was put together to investigate this whole thing. No, it was actually named after former California Governor and Supreme Court Justice Chief Earl Warren. And it was put together by LBJ. It was assembled 1 week after Kennedy was killed, 5 days after Lee Harvey Oswald was killed. So they put it together. They said, we're going to figure this out. We're going to get to the bottom of it. It was put together by Lyndon Baines Johnson. It included Alan Dulles, the former director of the CIA. But LBJ was the one who really kind of was the tip of the spear, and he said, you're going to get to the bottom of this. You're going to figure this out. And it took him roughly 10 months. LBJ was just a really good guy, though. He wasn't. He wasn't. Let's see. Do I have this in here? I do. Okay, yeah. So this guy ordered some pants. And I have the
Another thing, the crotch down where your nuts hang is always a little too tight. So when you make them up, give me an inch that I can let out there, because they cut me. They're just like riding a wire fence.
And that, I love that. I think that's amazing. I think him ordering pants like that, and he was pretty open about all that stuff. So he was just kind of gross about stuff like that. Like he would take people for tours around the White House. He would take them out to like the Rose Garden and stuff, and he would stand out there. He'd like unzip and just stand out there with his equipment all hanging out and be like, "Hey, like
BDE.
Yeah, we're come over here. We're gonna have a handshake agreement." And they're like, "Do you have to do it while your dick's out?" And he was like, "I don't have a choice. My hands are kind of tied here." And he also had a mistress, like Kennedy, so
Sure.
fits the mood. Except she was underage. He
was like an old man.
Yeah.
He's like 30 years Kennedy Sr.
And she was like probably half Kennedy's age. He was.
Ew.
Yeah. They did have a child together. Of course, this is her side of things, but she did file a paternity suit against LBJ, so good for her. Fuck him. That's my opinion. That's me putting my opinion in there. The Warren Commission determined that there was only one shooter, and that there were 2 bullets, 3 shots. That's what killed Kennedy. Lee Harvey Oswald fired off 3 shots in like less than 6 seconds, and that's what and 2 of them made contact. That's what killed Kennedy. Officially.
Okay.
That's the information we're working with now. So
prove it.
Right. Well, they did, but it involves a magic bullet. So some of the various things leading up to it, there is the CIA connection, which, you know how much I love to get on them. So this is my favorite part, so I put it first.
I want to be on you.
I'm going to be honest. So I know some people who know me know that I've been like waiting to get to this point just because I like to get my digs in there. But all this stuff is like provable, like documented information. So Allen Dulles, who had been the director of the CIA before this, he was a long time ago before this. He was a lawyer along with his brother John Foster Dulles at Sullivan and Cromwell. They helped write the Treaty of Versailles, which was ratified in 1919. It essentially ended World War I. And these lawyers, from Sullivan and Cromwell, the Dulles brothers, got together, they wrote it, and got it ratified and ended World War I. Hooray! Right?
Yay.
Pretty good stuff.
Yeah. Why do I feel like there's more and it's not?
Because there is, and it isn't. So we know how the CIA has a playbook of sorts. They like to infiltrate a country, attempt to bargain on quote-unquote behalf of the U.S., and then overthrow the government if they can't get what they want. I want to be clear, too. When I say on behalf of the U.S., is what I mean is on behalf of like private investors and corporations and stuff like that.
So nothing changed from now.
No.
Okay.
So when they wrote the Treaty of Versailles and it was signed, it ordered 153 billion marks to be paid as quote-unquote war reparations. 153 billion marks in 1919.
No.
Today, that's over 250 trillion. So the entire country was bankrupted. There were stories of people turning in their entire life savings for a loaf of bread, papering their walls with marks because it was useless. It was, got to do something with it. Like, it had zero value. But it did have a thriving economy, or not a thriving economy, but it had a thriving industry. The factories that had been churning through World War I and stuff like that, that stuff was all still going strong. So, but the prices of them had been tanking. So these guys bought into them at these rock bottom prices, and then kind of helped drive it and turn it around. So what they did, American bankers and American-backed companies bought into these German companies. And all this is before the CIA, and before World War II, meaning that American banks and companies were supporting Nazi growth before and up to World War and during World War II. Even theories that say Hitler was kind of put in power to make what happened happen because it was good for business. They needed war on a global scale for it to.
So, like, hey, we know this fucking asshole who has some pretty shitty views and wants to kind of try to, conquer.
So, well, the Dulles brothers worked alongside of heads of corporation like Remington, who were clearly famous for their typewriters, and seriously, Remington typewriters. And then during World War I, they shifted focus and started producing rifles, or I think they always made them, but like shifted heavily that direction and away from typewriters completely.
Typewriters and rifles. That's what Remington does best.
Yeah, shoot somebody and write them a letter. So there was also Averell Harriman, son of E.H. Harriman, who was a railroad tycoon. These guys kind of pick and choose who get to be a part of their elite club. And part of doing that is they pick from other elite clubs around the world. Quick sidebar, this documentary goes into like a whole secret society thing at this point, which is kind of fun. Because, you know how much I love secret societies.
I say, when is that not fun,
Yeah, and they talk about Skull and Bones, which, I think that one's pretty interesting. But they talk about some of the famous Skull and Bones members. Secretary of State Max William Evarts, Treasury Secretary Franklin McVeigh, Chief Justice Simeon Eben Baldwin, President William Howard Taft, the guy who created American football, Walter Camp, Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Pierre Jay, Director of Standard Oil, Percy Rockefeller, founder of Harriman Brothers, the largest investment bank in the world, Averell Harriman, son of E.H. Harriman, financier George Herbert Walker, CIA Director Prescott Bush, President George Herbert Walker Bush, President George W. Bush, and also President hopeful one-time John Kerry. Which was funny because they ran against each other. So it's like really who wins?
Right.
They do. Who loses? Everybody else.
They do.
Exactly. And it's funny because that was the one where the kid asked him at like what was it, Florida State or whatever, when he was doing like a Q&A when he was in
Don't tase me, bro.
Yeah.
Don't tase me, bro.
Take a second.
I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. It's there. Can you hear us now? Thank you so much. I appreciate you continuing the sub, and it means a lot to me. And I hope I don't let you down with any of the stuff I produce.
She's like, I would like to fucking hear it, please.
Right? Let me hear it, please. So secret societies seem to rub JFK the wrong way. He said, quote, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. So, props to that, because I agree. You can kind of get a sense for how incestuous these relationships are when you look at them, though, or when you hear a list like that, and towards the end you hear Prescott Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, who obviously was named after this Prescott Bush, and this other guy were so close that he was named after him. He named his son after him. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
We're really good friends, but maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. But I don't see giving my son your entire name.
Beautiful, articulate sons.
I don't see me giving my son your entire name, and then just kind of tacking my last name on there.
Yeah. I mean, you fucking better, but
part of the reason why I don't have a kid. I have naming rights doled out to so many people.
I'm at the top of the list, though. Don't trip.
Worked my way up there. So you can see how, like I said, you can see how incestuous these relationships are, and how these quote unquote elite work to keep it that way.
It's the most rich white person name of all time.
Yeah. Well, not quite yet, because it's kind of like how royalty used to inbreed, though, to keep their bloodlines pure. Yeah. So George Herbert Walker and Prescott Bush teamed up with a man named, whitest name ever, Fritz Thiessen.
Yeah. All right. That wins.
Fritz wrote a book called I Paid Hitler. And it's all about how he was basically a social economic project gone completely off the rails, where they were like, let's see if we can get him over here to drum up support for war. If we can make money by selling them stuff. And then America got drawn into the war, and they were like, well, we can still make some money. So they played both sides. You see, I play both sides, so I always come out on top.
Thank you, Mac.
This guy, Fritz Thiessen, was so rich, he actually paid for the building of the Bismarck, which was like a German World War II battleship.
Yeah.
It was sunk, but this guy paid out of pocket to build a battleship.
I got this. Don't even.
Yeah.
Send me the invoice.
And he was building it for Nazis, so you know.
Yeah. So yay that it was sunk.
Yeah, he owned he owned the company United Steelworks, which manufactured 3/4 of Germany's steel. So, yeah, he was making money, especially while they were ramping up to go to war. They came together to financially assist the Nazi Party. They teamed up with the head of the German Central Bank to convince Hindenburg to make Hitler the chancellor in 1933. So you can see how these guys just after World War II are like already have stuff in motion or just after World War I already have stuff in motion to create the Second World War. It didn't take them very long.
Yeah.
Some kind of 4D chess shit that they're trying to pull. Causing a world war, skating away, making billions. And they didn't even really try to hide it. The address for the Nazi Party, like if you wanted to write a letter to the Nazi Party, was 39 Broadway, Manhattan. It was in a brownstone downtown. And it was just a brownstone right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that?
So Fritz Thiessen had a family lawyer, I guess, as you do when you're hella rich like that. That lawyer's name? John Cena. No, Alan Dulles, the guy who eventually became the director of the CIA. Remember him from before when he bankrupted Germany and then let his friends buy into their companies at rock bottom prices? So, along with Prescott Bush, Averell Harriman, George Herbert Walker, and the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, others, and the Dulles brothers, they helped establish the Union Bank to launder money for the Nazis. The only reason I'm mentioning all this is because there's so much going on with so many millions of billions of dollars being moved around that should anybody step in and even somebody coming in with the best of intentions, just trying to correct things that he sees going wrong, that could throw a major kink into their money-making operation. And when that much money's on the line, what's one life versus literal trillions of dollars?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Not trillions of dollars is the answer to that hypothetical.
Right. So they raised money for the Nazi Party inside the U.S., received donations from some of the more well-known families in the country, like Colgate, DuPont.
I know, and you mentioned Hindenburg earlier. Is that
he was the chancellor of Germany?
Oh, okay.
Or not the chancellor, but he was like.
I thought it was like another rich dude, and I was like, is this guy?
Well, it was, but he was
dirigibles.
He was. It was he was like a rich dude in Germany. He was like their guy.
I'm just wondering if it was if he was involved at all with the Hindenburg.
That was named after him.
Ah, okay. Fun.
Yeah. So the Colgate family, DuPont family, which they really kind of like to throw their money at anything. They're the ones that used to host the parties for the psychics that we talked about during the astral projection episode. How they like to, they would host these parties and get people who could do mind tricks and bend spoons and have these crazy elaborate parties for them.
Rich white people things.
Right, and then they started working alongside the CIA, trying to help them uncover all kinds of fun stuff about the brain. Also, have a defense contract with them and all that stuff. Weird. The Rockefellers were donators, and the list goes on. They planned on installing a fascist dictatorship in the United States. They planned to lead this. The man they planned to lead this was a true, like, honest hero. Smedley Darlington Butler, which is a great name, but his nickname is even better. His nickname was Old Gimlet Eye.
Old Gimlet Eye.
Old Gimlet Eye.
Like what's a gimlet?
That guy's eye. So check this out. This is Smedley Butler saying his piece on the whole thing.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. The plan as outlined to me was to form an organization of veterans, to use as a bluff, or as a club at least, to intimidate the government and break down our democratic institutions. The upshot of the whole thing was that I was supposed to lead an organization of 500,000 men, which would be able to take over the functions of government. I talked with an investigator for this committee who came to me with a subpoena on Sunday, November 18th. He told me they had unearthed evidence linking my name with several such veteran organizations. As it then seemed to me to be getting serious, I felt it was my duty to tell all I knew of such activities to this committee. My main interest in all this is to preserve our democratic institutions. I want to retain the right to vote, the right to speak freely, and the right to write. If we maintain these basic principles, our democracy is safe. No dictatorship can exist with suffrage, freedom of speech, and press.
So,
Looking for
no. Shout out to Smedley Butler, because he got selected to lead all this, and he was like, yeah, totally, I'm in. And then played along and got all the information, got all the people who were involved, everybody who's bankrolling this, and was like, yo, FDR,
Check this out.
look what I've got for you here. And he handed it to him. And FDR said, this is great. This is really good information, and I'd love to prosecute all of them, but they're all heads of corporation. We just came out of the Great Depression. Can't really afford to do that. So we're going to let them go. So, unfortunately, that happened.
A real quick side note, a gimlet is a tool for drilling. It's like a hand tool for drilling small holes without splitting the wood.
So that guy, they called him Old Tool for Drilling Small Holes Eye?
I guess. Used as a metaphor, the term is also used to figuratively describe something that is sharp or piercing.
Ah, sharp eyes. Guys got him. I get it. I'm for it. I like it. Old Gimlet Eye.
Oh, look at the term gimlet-eyed can mean sharp-eyed or squint-eyed for one that is used for Major General Smedley Darlington Butler. It's in the Wikipedia for gimlet.
Boom.
There you go.
In the Wikipedia.
Yep, there it is.
So yeah, Smedley goddamn Butler played the part he needed, got the information he needed, went to the president, couldn't do anything about it. He was allowed, however, FDR was allowed to seize assets through the quote-unquote Trading with the Enemy Act. I think that's what it was called. But he was too little too late. Nazis used his Ford engines as parts for their tanks. Hitler kept a life-size photo of Henry Ford behind his desk. They gave him like the high, how like you can earn the medals that they give out to like civilians and stuff. Henry Ford got the highest civilian medal that you could get from the Reich, from the Nazis.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. The Nazis were also used Standard Oil and IG Farben, who's been government backed for decades since, or also known as American IG, to do a lot of their that they were buying resources from. Coca-Cola specifically marketed to Nazis, like for the Olympics in 1936. Their labels had the swastika and the little iron eagle on them and stuff. So,
different time.
So one of my favorite stories is that in the desert, the Luftwaffe would take their Coca-Colas and wrap them up in a wet T-shirt, or like a wet, shirt, and then fly them up super high in the air, and then let them freeze, and then fly them back down. And when they got them down, unwrapped them, they had a nice cold Coca-Cola. I'm like, yeah, those Nazis, they sure are a fun bunch. They seem so inventive. Fucking assholes. So my point is the Nazi Party was actually a business investment paid for by U.S. companies, supported by government officials, and they were dealing with billions of dollars. And any threat to that meant a threat to their very way of life. Some of the profits that were made from this time were put into a hedge fund by Prescott Bush. That hedge fund was a blind trust. And that blind trust was used to fund some of the presidential dynasties that we know, like George Herbert Walker Bush.
One term.
George W. Bush.
War criminal.
Come on, you got one. And I think the cash kind of ran out for old Jeb.
Please clap.
Bush. They got down to the end and they were like, shit, we're kind of out, man.
We had to fund 2 with the whole John Kerry, George Bush shit. We had to make it look real, man.
Please clap.
AT&T even gave Hitler the most up-to-date phone lines at the time.
Is Jeb Bush Doofus Rick?
He probably. I think it's
like they go to Thanksgiving. They're like, Jeb, hey Jeb, you got to see the kids' table this year. Me and Dad said so.
He's over there. You guys want to see a magic trick? And the kids are like, that's great, Uncle Jeb.
Please clap.
American railway companies laid the tracks that actually carried the trains that moved prisoners to Auschwitz.
Wow.
Yeah. Zyklon B gas that was used in the gas chambers was made by IG Farben, which also known as American IG. So, you know.
Damn, Instagram was killing it back then.
This was all leaked by a Dutch intelligence agent who kind of discovered everything after the war, and then he said he was so sickened by it that he couldn't keep it to himself. He couldn't just take the information and give it to the proper people. He said, this is fucking gross, and people need to know about this.
Yeah.
And so he tried to put the information out there. Obviously, with as well as all those companies are doing today, either people don't care.
Yes.
Or they didn't get the information.
The first one.
Also, yes.
Yeah.
The point to this is major corporations do have an agenda, and if you happen to disrupt the plan, you're painting a target on yourself. So, you know, JFK is already interrupting, you know, billions of dollars being moved around the world with his being against wars and all that stuff. So, these major corporations who have their own military, or known as the CIA, they can apply pressure. They do that kind of stuff, and they go outside of their way to make it look like an accident, to make it look like somebody else, rather than, or you know, to make it clear that it wasn't them, or to make it at least tough to trace back to them. They use the mob, mafia. And that's one that everybody seems to hit on. Everybody's like, the mob did it. The mob killed JFK. There's a lot of validity to that.
What did Fat Tony have to do with this?
That's you'll see when we get there. But they were in charge of the unions, like set design in Hollywood. So very few movies from the 20s on were made without mafia help. There were specific family members who were like liaisons to the studios. There was one because the thing I was watching said that a lot of the mobsters were like big dumb Italian guys. They were like gorillas that, you know, yeah, I'll go shake them down. And like, that was it. They weren't bright. So they had this guy that worked for him. Like, his name was, they called him Murray the Camel Humphrey because he wore camel skin jackets. And I think also probably because he had hump in his last name.
I was gonna say that didn't hurt.
But he wasn't Italian. So, you know, he cleaned up nice, and he like...
He's like, slick the hair back. No.
He wore like those... He looked like Lyle Stanley, the monorail salesman.
Oh, yeah.
But like in a camel skin jacket. And so so he was like the guy who would go talk to the studio executives. He would go talk to the Warner Brothers. They'd be like, hey, we want to make a movie. And he'd be like, okay, you're going to use... these guys for catering, you're going to use these guys for set design, you're going to use these guys for transport, and those are your options. And they'd be like, okay, deal. And that's how they got their movies made. So much of Hollywood was actually mafia controlled that again, they had to get mafia dons permission to make these movies. People like Gary Cooper, Clark Gable, Rat Pack members like Peter Lawford, old Blue Eyes himself, Frank Sinatra, and even Miss Marilyn Monroe were alleged to be bagmen for the mafia. So like when they would travel from New York to Los Angeles,
Like,
they
here,
would,
keys to this, Frank.
it wasn't even that. It was like, put these hundreds of thousands of dollars in your duffel bag. If anybody stops Frank Sinatra with $100,000 in his duffel bag, who's going to be like, whoa, hey, Frank, you got no business having $100,000 in your duffel bag. You know, that's, geez, Miss Monroe, it's awfully kind of you to have your body weight in cocaine, but you really don't need that. You know what I mean? Like, who's going to stop them? They even had a priest. They nicknamed Father Cash, who would do the same thing, because, you know, who's going to stop a priest? I would. I'm going to shake down every priest I see. I know you're connected.
I was going to say, probably just like sexual abuse attorneys.
Well, yeah, it was fun.
Well, you asked.
So like you, nothing is off limits for the mob.
They did it. I didn't do it.
By this point, the mob was a little bit full of themselves, and there was a mob boss named Sam Giancana who told his brother, "We've got the White House. Like, we've got control of the White House. It's ours." And they had ties that ran deep. Allegedly, even were able to corrupt J. Edna Hoover, who was the pinnacle of patriotism. He was the guy who kind of kickstarted the whole anti-communist Red Scare. By the end of his storied career, it was nearly 5 decades long, and he was the director of the FBI. So 5 decades in one position as the director of the most powerful law enforcement in the country. Like, that's wild. Especially in the 50s. You know, you can't. What do you take from a guy who's the head of the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country?
His fucking balls.
You take his power. Everything.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
well-
Figurative balls.
So in the
Of course.
50s, you know, there was a lot of stigma. Men were men. Homosexuality was pretty frowned upon. Cross-dressing was pretty frowned upon.
And by frowned upon, I mean I'll fucking kill you if you do it.
And Hoover liked both those things. So he was made aware of the fact that the mafia had photographic evidence of him cross-dressed and engaging in sexual acts with another man. In fact, the photo is allegedly of Hoover blowing his number 2 in command, and also not
Giving him a Hoover?
not so hetero life partner, the Clyde Tolson. Yeah, he was giving him the Hoover. I hope that takes off. I really hope that takes off. Except Hoover they kept him supplied with money, and like they were like, "Hey, we've got this if you ever try to go against it, but here's some money for helping us." So he was making millions. Why would he stop any of that?
Yeah.
And you know he had incentive to not. And he let them operate as long as they weren't causing any outright trouble. So they learned to operate like you don't do like the St. Valentine's Day massacre. You don't kick in the door of the building, Tommy gun everybody down, and then throw a match and walk away. You take the one guy you need, you take him out, you shoot him in the head, you roll him in a carpet, you throw him in a fucking hole, and nobody says anything about it. And because the cops aren't called, nobody's disturbed.
It's not some big deal.
Yeah, and we don't come out and investigate. Deal? Right. Deal. So that's kind of what's going on right now with organized crime and law enforcement in the country, because the FBI is there. There is no CIA.
So the FBI is responsible for that like classic image of a body rolled up in a rug.
Well, no, I mean, I took a little bit of
right.
free license, creative license there with that,
Okay.
but they basically said no news is good news, so you keep it quiet and we won't come after you.
Hey, shut the fuck up a while, and we
Right.
got this for you.
At one point, Democratic politician and possible future presidential candidate, because people were talking about, oh, he's got a good chance to run for president. His name was Anton Shermack. And his whole deal was he was cracking down on bootleggers. And remember that. Remember bootleggers. He was assassinated
Trying
for
to
it.
run some shine.
He was assassinated for it while on stage with FDR. He was on, somebody shot him from the crowd. The guy's name was Giuseppe Zangara. He claimed it was because he hated all rich people. But in the book Double Cross, Sam Giancana claimed that it was because he told Giuseppe to say that. Like, basically, if you get caught, you say, hey, I just fucking hate rich people. That's why I did it. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's cracking down on bootlegging.
Right.
And they said when they put Zangara in the electric chair, Sam leaned over to his brother Chuck and expressed his pleasure in how nice and neat the whole thing wrapped up. And he said in his book, he said this was something that the mafia had been doing forever. In fact, he said it was a practice, quote, as old as the Sicilian hills.
Damn, cue like Angela Lansbury as a teapot singing like song as old as.
Yeah, I mean, and the picture they used in the documentary for him while he's saying it is him like sitting there in a trench coat with sunglasses and a fedora, and he's just like,
Oh my God.
except if you look carefully, his hand is handcuffed to the bench. And it's just fucking genius.
Are we the baddies?
We have skulls on our caps. So yeah, it was. He said he couldn't believe nobody ever caught on to the scam of like setting up a fall guy and having them take the heat. You know, I can't believe that.
Keep that in mind for later too. Foreshadowing.
Right. So to sum up, there was a political spokesman who was working to better the lives of the people around him. He was murdered in broad daylight by a quote unquote patsy, who was killed for his crimes. This was
Like Patsy Cline?
close, similar. This was in 1935, 27 years before JFK. Yeah. So it's, the stage has been set. It's actually,
And you got some time to work on it.
right, perfect the craft. It's actually amazing the timing of how the mob got so much power over America, and the quick and dirty of it is essentially there was a boat designed to outrun German U-boats to deliver supplies during World War II. It was sabotaged in New York Harbor by a Manhattan-based Nazi agent. Great job, Hoover. And a naval intelligence officer contacted the mob because of their intricate dealings with the dock workers union and things being imported and exported, like Art Vandelay.
Right.
The mafia was kind of on its last leg on the East Coast. It had been hurt. Like the mafia was doing.
I've heard latex is up this year.
I'm doing bad. Like, look at me. I got Crocs on. I'm doing bad.
I'm out of breath.
So I'm calmly walking away. And the mob was hurt. They were not doing well. A lot of their guys had been pinched, and it was a whole thing. Luckily for them, the U.S. needed their help. And as a result, they cut a lot of deals. They established governments in Sicily after Mussolini had gone through and locked up all the mob bosses when the Allied forces were moving through Italy after they'd kind of beat them up during World War II. They took a lot of these. So Mussolini had locked up a lot of the organized crime bosses in Italy, and when AMGOT or AMG, American Militarized Government. Anyway, it's the troop that goes through and establishes government in foreign countries when they do this kind of thing. And they took a lot of the organized crime members out of prison and put them in charge. You are now the mayor of this city or this whatever.
Oh, fun.
And they said at one point there was a murder every 3 days. So, nailed it.
Nailed it.
Yeah. So anyway, that leads to that fat Tony clip where you help the mob helps you back.
As you no doubt recall, you were done a favor by our how shall I say, mafia crime syndicate.
Oh yeah.
Now the time has come for you to do us a favor.
Fat Tony, you mean to tell me the mafia only did me a favor to get a favor in return? For shame. So literally the U.S. government coming to them on hands and knees asking for help gave organized crime the upper hand, allowed them to have a resurgence. So now not only do they have the top law enforcement agency in the country and its main guy under their umbrella, but now the U.S. military is working for them. So they're powerful and they're feeling it. So much so that one of the mob bosses who was serving a 40-year sentence was released. Like they had that kind of pull where they were like, you know
He's
what?
like, no, I'm not.
Yeah. You're not.
All right. Yeah. No, he's not actually. Hey.
This guy's got a point. After he was released, he joined the CIA as a field agent for him. So super cool guy.
Can't beat him, join him.
Yeah. That guy's name, John Cena. Actually, his name was pretty cool. It was Lucky Luciano.
Lucky Luciano.
That's a pretty solid name.
That's like when like those like sandwich places will name sandwiches after people.
Yeah.
Like that's the guy who you hope you can name a sandwich after one day, because like Yeah, like ordering.
It's called the Lucky Luciano. What is it? It's capicola, it's mozzarella, it's
mortadella,
it's pastrami, and then more pastrami, and then
some roast beef, and then get the fuck out of here.
and we throw it on the counter, shoot you in the chest. So yeah, I agree. That is a good. I mean, that is a good sandwich name. And there's probably some deli in New York or Chicago
who's paying protection money and has got the Lucky Luciano on the
they
menu.
got you. Let me get a Luciano. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
and the payment.
Yeah, up front. You like your kneecaps? I'm gonna get a letter from a disgruntled mafia hitman.
I was just gonna say we should stop.
I don't like being portrayed in this light. Because of this, I'm going to ask you to stop now. Okay, but what's the mob ever done for me? If I was Joe Kennedy, I could tell you what the mob had done for me. This isn't like all this stuff isn't really new to organized crime or politics. So JFK's father, Joe, made the family's fortune as a bootlegger during Prohibition. That's why I said remember bootlegging. That's important.
Remember bootlegging?
Oh, I remember. He built the family on the back of organized crime, and as such, he was able to help wash the hands that he helped dirty. He built a relationship with large East Coast crime families and used that to further his family's lot in life. And as a result, when Jack and Bobby got into the political game, there were certain expectations. Back scratching, hand washing, and such. In fact, Sam Giancana helped Joe Kennedy out of a jam. And he was basically, Joe had swindled another mob out of a fortune, and they wanted him for it. And Giancana and his crime syndicate, his organized crime syndicate, said no. This is done. You are done. If you make another move towards him, you're fucking dead, and we own everything you have, and we'll take it all, and we'll burn it in front of you because we don't want it. And it went away. So he asked Sam Giancana for help. Sam helps. Favors get favors in return. Fat Tony.
That's how it works, I've heard.
He wanted assurance that when Jack and Bobby made it into the political game, which they were poised to do, recent heat that the mafia had been feeling would be reduced with the help of the Kennedy boys, to which Joe Kennedy said, you got it. And in effect, basically signing his children's death warrants because both his sons were assassinated. Yeah. Sam Giancana tried to lure the Kennedys into his world and got really close. Peter Lawford, remember him from before, the Rat Pack member, the actor? Yep. He was a bagman for the mafia, allegedly. He married JFK's sister. So now he's in there. Sinatra wrote him a campaign jingle.
She's like, yeah, right, I do.
And he said, that's great, babe. Real swinging. Sinatra wrote a campaign jingle for Kennedy. All outward appearances showed JFK was in bed with the mafia. Everybody kind of assumed that he was. He seemed like one of the made men that was kind of bumming around with the rat. I don't know why this is a thing, but
hey, this is what they were doing out there.
Hey, whoa, hey, they're walking over here. In reality, JFK was in bed with Giancana's girlfriend, Judy Campbell, and kind of gleaming her for information. He was like, what's Sam up to? And she's like, oh, Sam's doing this. And she's like, well, Sam wants some information from you. And he was like, okay, give her this or give him this. And so he was giving falsified or incomplete reports to Giancana. And in return, taking it on good faith and thinking that he was actually getting what he wanted from the arrangement that he had with Joe, was giving good information back to Kennedy. Because for being a mobster and all that entails, everything I've read about Sam Giancana, he was an honest man. As far as being a mobster goes, when he was moving drugs and weapons.
They're all honest men until they need to talk to the authorities.
Well,
right?
he was moving drugs and weapons, and when he would have to go through another mafia's territory, he had to move a lot through Miami from Cuba because he was setting up casinos in Cuba because he loved gambling and stuff like that. So he was setting up casinos in Cuba. He had to go through Miami to get there. I mean, that's just how it works. And he would pay the Miami mob for letting him bring all his stuff through there. So they got their cut for just letting it happen and doing nothing.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he owns them. It doesn't mean they own him. Doesn't mean anything aside from a mutual respect of a working relationship. So he was not an underhanded guy for being a mobster.
Diplomatic.
He was yeah, diplomatic is a good way to put it. So he was working on good faith with JFK, and JFK was not necessarily working on good faith with him, but can you really be mad at JFK for it? Because, he's a mobster, and you're the, fucking president. So it's a pretty slick plan. There's no way double-crossing the mafia has ever gone wrong for anybody ever.
No.
Then JFK froze over relationships with Judy, with Sinatra, with everybody. Had a meeting with Giancana and his father. So the three of them sat down in a hotel room and talked things out. There was probably a lot of and whoa, hey, come on.
A lot of thumb pointing.
Yeah. There's a lot of speculation because nobody really knows what was said in any of the meetings. But they seem to have reached an agreement. And that was that. Like, everything was copacetic and they left.
What a meeting.
It's good.
Not many end like that. That's good.
Right. Nothing ends this positively. There's a lot of the political connections. I know I keep jumping back, but like I really want to set the table for how this JFK stuff played out because there are so many cooks in the kitchen. Too many cooks in the kitchen. There's so many players at work potentially. And so that's kind of why I keep going back and like establishing, here's the CIA's connection. Here's the mafia connection. So I'm going to do that again with the political connection. Obviously, everybody's vying for power. They want power and money, and the only thing they fear is losing either or both. That's why you see political dynasties like Jerry Brown and his dad, Jerry Brown, or Bill and Hillary Clinton, the Bush family, because, family and power wants to keep power. Prescott Bush ran a newspaper ad in 1947 looking for a politician to groom. He basically said, I want somebody that I can help in their political career. That's what I do. And he got somebody.
He wanted to be Aaron Burr to Alexander Hamilton.
Is that what Aaron Burr and Alexander?
Yeah, I mean, Alexander Hamilton seeked out the help of Aaron Burr and got looked up to him and kind of took him under his wing. And
I did not know that.
Aaron Burr didn't go out and seek him. It was the other way around.
Oh. But still,
he took him under his wing.
Mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what this was. So
I know that because I've seen Hamilton, not because I'm good at history.
There was way more singing back in the day than I thought.
Shout out Lin-Manuel Miranda.
So Prescott Bush places this ad and gets somebody. He gets a bite. So enter Richard Milhouse Nixon. Yay, Tricky Dick Nixon.
Everything's coming up Milhouse.
Actually, no, it didn't. Not for a long time. But as you do in politics at this point in time, Nixon teamed up shortly with a gangster by the name of Jacob Rubenstein. He was booted from the Chicago crime syndicate. He kind of liked numbers, and he liked drugs, and that's kind of why he was booted. They didn't want to move a lot of drugs in Chicago, and they were like,
"Come on, man, do you smell cocaine? I smell cocaine."
Well, he was like, "There's so much money to be made in this. Why aren't we?" And they were like, "Because that's not what we're doing." And so they kind of kicked him down the road and moved him to another family. There were trades in the off season. He relocated.
He was Corky Romano.
Chicago would like to announce a trade, sending Jacob Rubenstein down to Dallas. So he shows up in Dallas, starts doing the same kind of thing, and he sets up a nightclub called the Carousel Club. And that's where he hung out. JFK's so that was Richard Nixon getting into the political game. You get in, you get with George Bush or Prescott Bush, you get your gangster, you get everything sorted. The two of you are going to get things done. JFK's running mate for his presidency was LBJ, who, like we discussed, not a super swell guy. Allegedly, he had his own personal hitman named Malcolm Wallace. Again, get your own gangster when you get in the politics game. Malcolm Wallace,
politician. Here's your gangster.
Yeah, congratulations. Welcome to the Senate. Here's your assassin.
He's just in the shadows like this.
Just see a cigarette glowing in the corner. Is that him?
It's not him.
I don't know.
Hey, you got a comment.
Oh, I got a comment. Hey, what's up, Alan? Yeah, gang. Welcome in. I see you too. Hell yeah. So yeah, JFK, not a super swell guy. He had his own personal assassin named Malcolm Wallace. Malcolm Wallace killed a pro golfer named John Douglas Kinzer. He was found guilty of murder one. LBJ commuted his sentence to a 5-year suspended sentence for which he never served any jail time. Malcolm Wallace allegedly killed a lady named Josepha Johnson, sister of Lyndon Baines Johnson. So, you know, he allegedly had his own sister killed by his hitman.
Huh.
Yeah. He also had a lot of shady business dealings with Texas businessman Billy Celestes, which is just, again, one of those names, like, that's a sandwich name. Like, let me get a Celestes. You want any mayo on that? It's a Celestes, bro. Triple mayo. Like,
we both must want sandwiches.
I am kind of hungry. So there was a man named Frank Fiorini, or Frank Sturgis, who was a CIA operative, ex-Special Forces sharpshooter, and in Cuba, smuggling arms to both the Batista regime and Castro's insurgent fighters. Again, I'm playing both sides, so no matter whoever wins, I come out on top. Like it's genius. It's a can't fail strategy. Fiorini felt double crossed by Castro, which, you know, little projection there, but Castro took precautions like closing Cuba's casinos and nationalizing the businesses. And
Sure.
and he was like, no,
Better safe than sorry.
He's, now we're losing all this money. And basically that was them saying, hey, look, we're not going to let you drill for oil on half of Cuba. Like they owned like something like 6 million acres.
Have you had our cigars?
Well, see, that's the thing. They were using slaves for tobacco farms, sugar farms, for Coca-Cola, and drilling for oil for Exxon Shell.
We're so great.
Yeah, no. But see, it's not just us, because some of these were there's a whole other thing about like I want to say like the Dutch king who like just gave a bunch of fuel to the Nazis because they owned Shell or owned parts of Shell, and like we're like, here, just take this. We're not going to charge you for it. And it was a whole thing. So it's not just us. Don't worry, it's not just us. But at this point in time,
doesn't make it right.
Right? No. Two wrongs do not make a right. But at this point in time, there were like half the island was covered in oil derricks from American companies. You know, they're farming, they're using slaves for all this stuff. Castro was like, no. And that really cramped our style. So this Frank Fiorini fella teamed up with the Batista regime, who had fled to Miami, like who survived the insurgency. They all fled to Miami, and they were like, okay. They teamed up with this guy again. The mafia is pissed at Cuba because of illegal gambling has been all stopped down by Castro shutting all that stuff down. Major corporations who've been using Cuba for its resources are pissed. Coca-Cola, Philip Morris, things like that.
Come on, let us keep exploiting you.
Yeah, come on. And you know, so they're all pissed. Everybody's pissed. So they assemble a hit squad. Alan Dulles and Averill Harriman and Richard Bissell decide their old friend Prescott Bush's oldest son, George Herbert Walker Bush, should have the honors of assembling the squad. So this was corroborated by a memo from J. Edna Hoover on November 29th, 1963, 7 days after the assassination of Kennedy. The memo alleges that E. Howard Hunt, which is a name that we'll be seeing a lot more of, was a CIA assassin and helping supervise the anti-Castro Cubans. He got help from an oil buddy named Jack Alston Crichton, and they recruited and trained Cubans that would be called Alpha 66, AR-40, Operation 40, and kind of other names along the way. They were a Cuban hit squad. Their objectives were kill Castro, kill supporters of Castro, overthrow government, install rich supportive government that, you know, supports America's belief system and makes American companies hella rich. Wait a second. Yeah, no, that's right. So this invasion was the precursor to the Bay of Pigs. For those of you who don't know what the Bay of Pigs is, it was called Operation Zapata, which, again, remember Zapata.
I'm trying. There's a lot to remember.
No, I know. Fucking I know. Operation Zapata, or the Bay of Pigs, was a massive shitstorm that didn't necessarily have to happen. But fun fact, George, this is as far as you have to remember Zapata. Fun fact, George Herbert Walker Bush, the sole owner of Zapata Oil, which was a drilling company, or which was drilling for oil on a small island just off the coast of Cuba, like 40 miles off the coast of Cuba, between Cuba and Miami. And it was used as a supply island for the CIA camps. So they would like move everything because you can't just go give guns to Cuba, or you can't take guns even if it's for our own guys there. You can't just take a bunch of weapons to another country.
Right.
So,
but if you had a little island to stop on in between,
right? So they take the guns to the island, and then a U.S. Navy ship disguised as a civilian liner named the Barbara.
Barb.
Call her Bar for short. Here's a little trick they caught us in the CIA. Yeah, see, Simpsons have been OG about
They knew.
HW being in the CIA.
Oh, they knew.
He alleged, like on record, he says, "Oh no, I wasn't in the CIA until 1973," but he had definitely been in the CIA since like. But that's neither here nor there. They used it to stock up the training camps and stuff like that. But the fact that the ship's name was the Barbara, really tickled me, especially because when he was in World War II, he flew planes, and one of the planes he flew was named the Barbara II. And the other plane, when that plane was shot down, the other plane he flew was named the Barbara III. So,
I'm loyal to Barb.
Call her Bar for short. Damn it, that's one I should have put on here. So yeah, essentially we, U.S. and U.S. trained forces, invaded Cuba. There was a precursory bombing run a couple of days before all this happened, and before boots actually hit the ground. They had sea support, and air support was supposed to come through and like really finalize everything as like the stamp on at the end of it that says void. You know what I mean? Like these guys are in there, they're ripping and tearing, they're doing their thing, they're taking fire from the ocean. They needed a blanket of air fire, and that was promised to them by the CIA. They said, as we do this, you're going to get this support from the Navy. You're going to get this support through the air. We need for the boots on the ground. Like I said, it was promised by the CIA. So by the time the news of all this stuff had gone international, JFK was pissed. He was not happy about the Bay of Pigs. He was so not thrilled about it, he withheld the air support. He said no.
Actually,
yeah, he said, we will not do this because he feared because there was the Cuban Missile Crisis. There was people. They're aware of Russia hiding nuclear warheads or intercontinental ballistic missiles on Cuba, just off the coast of the United States, who's a communist country, who's working with Russia, like holding weapons for them. Like they could blow us up at any time. We don't want to attack them. Why did you attack them? And yeah, so as a result, again, he withheld air support, resulting in the death, capture, and interrogation and imprisonment of U.S. trained fighters. Usually not good. Usually not a good sign. It caused issues between Kennedy and the elites who were trying to profit from the exploitation of Cuba's resources and people, and the CIA, who had agents there, who were captured and potentially spilling secrets to the communists.
no.
I know. Anybody but them. So as a result, the failed Bay of Pigs, JFK closed the training camps that were in Cuba. The anti-Castro that were training the anti-Castro Cubans. He allowed Khrushchev, the Soviet leader, to like go inspect the camps and be like, "Look, we shut this shit down. It is done. We are done. This was an accident. I am sorry. We are sorry. This did not have to happen." And basically avoided nuclear war. Because, imagine you just attacked them. If they're not satisfied with that, that is
a sign of war.
They're going to open up. And what's the gun that everybody's got to everybody else's head right now is a nuke.
Mm-hmm. It's the biggest one.
Yeah. So this infuriated Joe McCarthy and J. Edna Hoover, who were literally building their entire careers on arresting and hassling people who they thought were communists. This is the Red Scare. They got people calling the FBI on their neighbors saying, well, this person's a communist.
Yeah.
Well, that person's a communist. Families calling on each other, like celebrities who hung out in certain circles. They'd be like, well, it's not so bad to share your money with some other people. And they'd be like, you're a fucking commie. And they'd call the FBI on them. And in fact, Marilyn Monroe was one of the people that they thought was a communist. So, little fun side story. She was paranoid because of all her intimacy with Kennedy.
Sure.
She'd been saying things like she wanted to sound smart, which she was, but she was taking information that was maybe above her pay grade and talking about it in circles where maybe she shouldn't have been. And as a result, she became paranoid. That and the drugs. She became paranoid. So she paid a private detective to bug her house and like tap her phones and stuff like that so she could monitor things that were going on. J. Edgar Hoover was like, we got to bug Marilyn Monroe's house. She's a communist. So they bugged her house, tapped her phones, did all this stuff. And then the White House was like, yo, dude, we know what you've been doing. None of our business. We don't care, but we got to tap her phones. We got to bug her house. So there's 3 different people or 3 different,
Groups,
sources,
individuals,
right, trying to tap Marilyn Monroe's phone.
They're like, put it under the lamp. What the hell is this?
Here's the best part. Here's the real kicker. The upshot of the whole thing, to quote Smedley Butler. All 3 of them called the same private detective. So this guy's like, you want me to do what? Yeah, normally it takes, this long, but I could charge you double and I'll get it done right now.
Almost instantly.
This guy is cleaning the fuck up.
Good for him.
Literally
Good for him.
I mean, that's just, I'm happy for him. I just think that's a fun story. So anyway, all this got out of control way fast, obviously. But hey, it's propaganda, baby. There was a lady named Marita Lorenz. She was Fidel Castro's lover, girlfriend, consort, person, whatever.
Individual.
Yeah, and then she was recruited by Frank Sturgis or Frank Fiorini to kill Castro. So they made a movie about it called My Little Assassin, starring Joe Mantegna.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just read a audiobook narrated by Joe Mantegna.
Yeah?
Yep.
Fat Tony reading an audiobook to you?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, he played Castro in this movie. And it was called My Little Assassin, but it sounds like a fucking children's program about spies.
It sounds like a campy rom-com.
Right?
Like she's like,
look at the dude.
She's tiny and clumsy.
The cover, because she was young. She was super young. Mm-hmm. So she's standing there on the cover, and she's got her hands up on his chest, and he's standing there holding her by the waist, and it's fucking Joe Mantegna with a big Castro beard and a little square hat and all that shit. It's so good. So she spilled the beans. She talked to Mark Lane, who was involved in the Kennedy assassination. I'm sorry, she talked to Mark Lane, who was investigating it, and about who was involved in the Kennedy assassination and why. Basically, she said that the night before the assassination, there was a big party, and all the people that were like involved in the whole conspiracy were there at this party. Like, this was their, okay, clear everything off the table. We got this. These are all the plans, and now we're gonna smoke cigars and get shit faced.
Now is the time.
Yeah. So she said, because she showed up to the party because she was with LBJ and she wanted to be there, and he was there. So she said Alan Dulles from the CIA, after Operation Northwoods, that was when the CIA decided it was going to, or he was fired from the CIA after the Bay of Pigs and Operation Northwoods, which was the U.S. deciding it was going to hijack a passenger airliner and crash it into U.S. soil in the name of Cuba, hoping to start a war, so they could overthrow Castro and install their own government who would play ball and make the CIA hella rich.
How'd that go?
Well, it didn't happen until like 2001, I think. I mean, it's fucking right there in the playbook, dude. Like, they tried it once, and the president was like, no. And they were like, okay, we're just gonna put this back in the pocket. We'll
wait 50 years.
Hey, Mom, can I go to my friend's house? No. Hey, Dad, can I go to, like, we're gonna try it with a different president. How about one that's, tied in with fucking George Bush? Like, It doesn't matter.
War criminal.
Different episode. Others involved: Richard Bissell, General Charles Cable, who were also fired from the Bay of Pigs. They were at this after the Bay of Pigs and Operation Northwoods. They were at this dinner as well. Robert Mayhew also enlisted Sam Giancana's. He was Sam Giancana's underboss. Johnny Giselle. He got enlisted to put a hit on Castro by Robert Mayhew. And for that, he was given an award. I'm just kidding. He was fired.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we already mentioned JFK doesn't play that mafia shit. He was like, I don't fucking want to be tied in with the mob. Why would you use the mob? And he was mad, so he fired him. Fuck you, you're out. While all this is happening, Jack Crichton and the Bush family had just purchased, like I said, 15 million acres of Cuba, roughly half the island, to drill for oil. Castro took power, and that was reduced to less than 20,000 acres. So he said, yeah, you paid for 15 million acres.
I don't know how it's going to go anymore, though.
Yeah, but that's adjusting for inflation and what things are now. You own 20,000 acres. You're lucky you own anything at all.
You're welcome.
Right. Meaning that the company that they had just invested in basically tanked and was worthless. And
it's fun for everybody.
Yeah, take that, oil company. But it tanked so bad it was delisted from the stock market. So, what do you do when you're a hella rich American businessman who takes a massive loss like that? You move onward and upward, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, borrow against your assets, and,
Or you say, like, federal government, please help me. Mafia, please help me.
No, you kill the president, apparently. So Crichton and other oil barons named Clint Murchison and Harold Lafayette Hunt were also taking major tax cuts due to the oil depletion allowance. Kennedy wanted to end the oil depletion allowance. Meaning that it doesn't matter if you lose money with oil or whatever, you're not gonna get to take write-offs from. Basically, he was cutting off a massive money-making scheme for them.
Yeah. He was closing a loophole.
Yes. So not only did the investment get reduced with no cash flow coming back from taxes, and the company went tits up, the tax break they were receiving was going away. And so those Texas businessmen, they know how to take a loss. Bobby Baker was an assistant to LBJ. In fact, he was LBJ's political advisor. He got in some hot water because he was arranging prostitutes and sexual favors for congressional votes.
Yeah, you can do that, I've heard.
I mean, you can. You just can't have somebody tell about it. So he was being investigated during all this time. He stepped down to help the cause, but LBJ knew his time at the White House was limited. Basically, he wasn't going to be on the ticket for re-election if Kennedy goes up for it, which, why wouldn't you re-elect Jack? He's killing the game.
Right.
No pun intended. J. Edna Hoover was pissed. He was at this party. He'd been making a mint, letting the mafia do its thing in exchange for millions of dollars in privacy concerning his sordid private life.
He's like, how dare you guys say this was a costume party? I show up here dressed as a little kitty cat.
I show up in drag, and all you assholes are telling me that it's not a costume party?
J. Edna Hoover, out.
Kicks over the plant on the little column as he walks out. So he and Mafia Don Vito Genovese invested millions of dollars together in an oil business owned by Clint Murchison that had tanked and gone bankrupt as a result of Castro's actions. Plus, like I mentioned, my own personal theory is that Hoover thought he was soft on communism and then was trying to catch JFK in the act. And he had information about JFK in Maryland from bugging her house, and he was like, hey, look, I've got this shit that shows you're not where you're supposed to be. So maybe keep it cool. And JFK, being JFK, was like, blow it out your ass. So
how to negotiate with terrorists?
Pretty much. And again, we've heard how the mafia has its tricks, quote, as old as the Sicilian hills. Like letting a patsy take a fall for him. The mafia was working with business tycoons and governmental and extra-governmental agencies so that they can employ the same tactics. The best way to set this up so that it can't be traced back to you, they used a man named George de Morenschild, who was a petroleum geologist. He was a professor. He was friends with Texas oil barons, including Crichton, Bush, and some of the others. He also had a friend named Lee Harvey Oswald. Oh. Yeah. This documentary that I watched alleges that Lee Harvey Oswald this guy was Lee Harvey Oswald's handler, and he placed him in the book depository to be found. Basically got him the job there, said, this is what you're doing.
Hold this gun.
Well, and not even that. Like, do this, and then when you're done, you're done.
Yeah.
Like, you're a patsy. And he was like, oh, well, $20 is $20. Like, that was what his gig was. So he basically signed up to be burned. According to a different documentary, Hoover had information on Oswald being a CIA agent in 1960 and chose not to report on any of it. Oswald was also alleged to have been a CIA training CIA training camp that Prescott Bush had set up in Cuba. All those camps that they were running, Oswald had gone through those they trained him to be a sharpshooter and all this other stuff. He also
get the gun.
Hey, listen, I told you don't get the gun until you tell me your name. However, Oswald may also have been an FBI agent undercover at the CIA because them supporting both sides is fighting against communist Cuba. Basically, the CIA playing both sides and supporting Castro on the uptake made them communists. So, because there was a lot of infighting between the CIA and the FBI and NSA and Department of Homeland Security and all this stuff around this time. They all hated each other. There was no sharing of information. They still like that.
Right.
So the CIA's over here supporting Castro on the upswing, and the FBI was like, "Oh, you guys are a bunch of fucking communists. We can't have that." So they start investigating them. So they take their FBI agent, this guy, change his name to Lee Harvey Oswald, put him in the CIA. He goes through the training camps. He goes through all that stuff. He gets the information. He's reporting back to Hoover. Makes sense, right? I mean,
yeah,
if your business is espionage, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, Hoover is the one who busted Prescott Bush, Richard Bissell, and Averell Harriman for doing business with the Nazis through Union Bank or Brown Brothers Harriman.
Okay.
So, he was pretty like he went up against the big guys too, but was like, hey, look, this is you can't be Nazis. So
it's just trust me, in a few years, this is going to be way more unacceptable than you think.
Right. So now we're actually getting into the actual assassination, things that happened and are alleged to have happened. Once they had the people, they had to come up with a plan. Once they had all these people in place, they had to come up with a plan. Too many snipers hitting the target at once would obviously destroy the target, and you can't have your single shooter theory.
Right.
You got 3 guys who all hit the president's head at the same time. That thing's gonna look like a watermelon. But there has to be fail-safes in case the first shot misses. And what do you do with the body afterwards? You can't have all this evidence rolling around in the public domain. You got to have an airtight seal on this entire situation. You got to have control of the body after the assassination. You got to have control over the witnesses, but more specifically, you need to have control over the narrative that gets out there. So once the wheels are set in motion, Nixon, who was brought into the political game by Prescott Bush, who is now a senator, he's got his gangster, remember? Jacob Rubenstein. There's also evidence that points to Nixon hiring E. Howard Hunt to be the assassin. Hunt was a would-be assassin through a CIA assassin, and he met him through Prescott Bush, and who was the director of Union Bank and all that stuff. George Bush obviously working for the CIA at this point. So Nixon meeting E. Howard Hunt, all this checks out. Like they all know each other. It's a click shit.
Whoa. George Bush didn't have anything to do with the CIA until 1973.
Definitely not while he was running for office, when he ran for Senate or anything like that. He wasn't working for the CIA.
No way, no how. That's what he said.
Yeah.
I heard that from a guy I know.
So from at the order of Sam Giancana, Rubenstein took Lee Harvey Oswald under his wing, so to speak. Was like, this is my little guy. Like, don't talk to him wrong.
Does your mother sew?
Get her to sew that. So from there, they hired hitmen like Charles Voight Harrelson. That's right, the father of Woody Harrelson. Which, let me see, I think I've got it. Yep.
You said you'd killed President Kennedy.
At the same time I said I had killed the judge, I said I had killed Kennedy. Well, do you believe Lee Harvey Oswald killed President Kennedy? We'll get back to that. alone, without any aid from a rogue agency of the U.S. government, or at least a portion of that agency. I believe you're very naive if you do.
That's the man himself speaking from prison. That's Woody Harrelson's dad speaking from prison on the situation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was trying to just like close my eyes and pretend it was Woody.
You can do it.
Yeah.
I'll show you a picture of him too when we're done.
Okay.
Or you
I
can.
feel like I've seen him. I've seen some pictures.
Yeah. So yeah, there he is saying, yeah, I was hired. There's other people who've made the claim as well. But Charles Nicoletti and Milwaukee Phil Aldericio, they were brought in at the request of Sam Giancana. They flew to Arizona and then were driven to Dallas so that they didn't have to fly directly into Dallas. So there's no like trail of them going where they're going. Overshoot the landing, drive back. And they got all the shooters were alleged to be paid $50,000 because there's multiple people. They basically assembled this strike force, and everybody was to be paid $50,000 for your role. Hit them or not, you're getting $50,000 for doing this. And it's not going to be paid by the CIA because it can't be traced back to them. It's not going to be paid by the mafia because it can't be traced back to them. So it got paid by the oil men, all the guys who were losing money because of Kennedy's dealings offshore and basically political policies fucking them all up.
50,000 in 1963, by the way, would be about the equivalent of $422,654 today.
So almost $500,000 to take a shot at the president.
Yeah.
You might not
really seem worth it.
You might not even have to.
Yeah.
You might not even have to. You could just be the guy down the road who doesn't have to take the shot.
Yeah.
So then, they had to put in the ground level work. Crichton and George H.W. Bush were in contact with Dallas Mayor Earl Cable, brother of now fired, disgraced CIA chief Charles Cable. So Charles Cable's the one that got fired after the Bay of Pigs and Operation Northwoods. He was one of the guys. Alan Dulles, Charles Cable. Cable's brother is the mayor of Dallas. So
connected.
No, so he is connected.
I feel like Charlie Kelly. In the
yeah,
room
it would be helpful to have like visual aids like that because there are so many spider webs that connect this.
So I'll be back tomorrow, and you just go ahead and get that done tonight.
We'll just pick up there. So yeah, they used the 488th Intelligence Society, which was like a secret society of sorts that includes roughly half the Dallas PD at the time.
What do you think happened to the first 487?
Well, they probably pulled some shit like this and then had to break it up. But it included half of the Dallas PD at the time, as well as members from the John Birch Society and the KKK. So they've got a nice spread of people there. John Birch Society is just like a little, like extra conservative religious nutcase thing.
Is that all?
That's all. The Klan, we all know what that is. But just so we're clear, that means roughly half of Dallas PD is working for the CIA at this point, who is working alongside the mafia, who are working for wealthy elite war criminals. So now that they've got control over the ground reaction from the police force, anything that really about half of the response is going to look genuine. So, then they work out the angle of, not completely blowing his head off when they shoot him. They contemplated having
so much, dude.
Dude, it really is because that's the CIA's move, is to make it as complicated as possible.
Overly complicated.
So that somebody's going to go, dude, Occam's razor, the easiest possible solution. It was one fucking nutsack in the book depository shooting. Because otherwise you have
on the stack of books shooting out a window.
Because otherwise you have to say shit like this and you sound like an idiot. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I hear myself when I say it.
I'm not saying you sound like an idiot. I'm just like...
No, I know, but
shit.
I'm sure somebody listening to this is like, are you fucking kidding me? And they, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
this is all I got.
All this information is there. I mean, it came from somebody.
Right.
It got put somewhere. So...
It was a guy.
You saw him.
I got this info from a guy. Come on. He was in the book depository.
They even contemplated having an assassin just run up and and he was going to be their Giuseppe Zangara.
Isn't that Franz Ferdinand?
Well, yeah, that was a mistake.
Oh, okay.
Because they pulled the car over with him.
That's right.
And the guy just happened to be nearby at a cafe and was like,
oh, that's right. It got like diverted from like an explosive or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I now remember. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, they contemplated having a guy just run up and point blank him. But they were like, but the Secret Service, like anybody who runs up to the car, the Secret Service is going to get to him. So we got to control the Secret Service now. So now like the reach grows a little further.
That's when you can talk about like the guy in the front seat turning around and
exactly. And that's when you get that kind of stuff mixed in. You start to cast a little bit of a doubt. That's the law in the United States. You want to be found innocent, you got to be able to prove
plausible deniability.
Well, and to prove somebody guilty, you have to be able to prove that they're guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you can cast doubt, then they're not guilty. Or they're not. They may not be guilty.
Yeah.
So Marita Loren, the one who was the subject of My Little Assassin, she's now hooked up with Frank Sturgis or Frank Fiorini. This guy. They drove from Miami, where they were living, to Dallas with
it's quite a drive.
Yeah, with a trunk load of weapons and a backup car with like other people. So he kind of did this thing. This guy named Jerry Hemming and Frank Sturgis, they kind of dealt weapons on behalf of the CIA. That's the thing that they do to fund their projects and stuff like that. And that was something that they did normally. So they drive to Dallas. She's with them because why not? And everything seemed normal. The guy Jerry Hemming I mentioned, he was a mercenary. He was ex-CIA, was in the Bay of Pigs, all this stuff with Sturgis. In an interview, they said, were you ever offered money to kill President Kennedy? And he said, directly? On numerous occasions. So, I mean, again, another person just saying, yeah, they offered me.
I didn't take it, but yes, they did.
Exactly. There were also two
Are you offering me to shoot somebody else now?
There are also two Cuban brothers named Ignacio and Guillermo, a Cuban pilot named Pedro de Aslans, and a Cuban man named Orlando Bosch. Orlando Bosch is allegedly the guy some people have seen the picture of Umbrella Man sitting on the curb after all the guy that's next to him. If you when you zoom in on the photo and enhance. He's got a big radio. Like a big handheld radio. Could be a walkie-talkie, could be a big AM/FM. Looks like the early
Vietnam,
80s. Looks like the early 80s cell phones. Big radio.
Okay.
So that's and he's involved. He's named out in some of this stuff. She assumed Marita assumed that this was just an arms deal like normal. They went and met with E. Howard Hunt, a CIA agent who remember him from earlier.
Yeah.
You don't have your list of names? He stayed an hour and left. He paid Sturgis with a large envelope filled with cash. And
as one does.
Yeah. And just for funsies, Spotlight magazine did an article with former CIA director Richard Helms, who said that Hunt was a CIA assassin and in Dallas on that day. And Hunt sued Spotlight.
Oh, come on, bro.
Hunt sued Spotlight for defamation and lost. So he couldn't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he wasn't a CIA assassin and wasn't in fact there on that day. And they were like, well, the article stands.
Goat's got a little take for you if you want.
Yeah, there's that. There is the whole the communist thing. But if that was the case, I feel like with his heavy-handed as LBJ was, and as pro-military industrial complex as he was, we probably would have gone straight to the nuclear option, or at least boots on the ground in Russia or Cuba or anything like that, and retaliated with force. I mean, you don't just get to kill a U.S. president and fucking moonwalk out of there. Peace, bitches.
Yeah.
Like, that's not... Even, nobody gets to kill Americans except Americans. That's it. So... It's not an odd historical thing. And there's been a lot of political assassinations that were...
We just talked about.
Yeah, Franz Ferdinand. Abraham Lincoln. Like you get a polarizing political figure, but those people, maybe not Franz Ferdinand. I don't know so much about him, so I can't speak to it. But I know Abraham Lincoln was polarizing and questioning things, questioning the powers that be, and maybe punching above his weight class. And that's kind of what I'm trying to like spell out, and that's kind of what JFK was doing, was maybe punching above his weight class. It's something that,
like, look, you're the president, but you're not. You know.
Yeah, like you're the president, but you don't have any real power. Just keep talking, keep the people fucking entertained, keep dancing, and we're gonna do all our stuff back here and make you look good when you're done. By the time you're done, everybody's gonna remember the name Camelot. And he didn't want to like play ball, so. Also, when they talked to E. Howard Hunt about like where he was and all that stuff, his story changed like 5 times.
Always a sign of a good truth teller.
Always. So this meeting that took place was November 21st, 1963, the night before the assassination. She wanted out. Marita told Sturgis that she wanted out because she was like, "What's going on?" Because normally she'd be like, "Hey, what's up? Like, what would we just get paid a fat envelope of cash for?" And he'd be like, "Oh, we're selling arms to these people. And then we're going to do this over here, and we're going to take the drugs, and we're going to go over here and sell it to these people, and then we're going to take all the money, and we're going to go back over here and split it." And she's always like, "Okay, cool, let's do it." And this time she was like, "What's going on?" And he was like, "I can't fucking tell you." And she was like, "You have to tell me. We're partners on this." And he was like, "We're not partners on this. I'm not telling you." And so she went and she bought herself a plane ticket and went back to Miami.
And then the screen pauses and he goes, "My little assassin."
We'll be right back after these messages. And everybody goes, "Ooh."
Filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Right? So she took a plane back to Miami. So she pieced out of there. She was pissed. After the assassination, when Sturgis got back to Miami, he told her, quote, "You should have been there. We made history. We killed the president." So he already came back and was just like, and you can look up on YouTube and shit, you can look up interviews with Frank Sturgis where he's talking about, "I was there. I was in the Bay of Pigs. He's the one who held air response back, and he sacrificed us. I don't appreciate being sacrificed because he wants to save face. He's not on the ground out there. He's not the one who's gonna die if he withholds that those air forces." Mm-hmm. And so he's pissed. You can tell he's fired up. Motive, opportunity, like it all, you know. Sure. Yeah. So sometimes I know there's people who they talk about as being complicit and stuff like this, and sometimes it's not entirely their fault. There was a CIA pilot named Tosh Plumley who flew several assassins into Love Field the day before, not knowing who they were or why, allegedly, according to one documentary.
Allegedly.
Yeah, he was just following orders. They said, fly from here to there, and he said, okay. He was a company man. So he did what he was told. So he was so much of a company man that he was involved in the Iran-Contra affair. He was the one flying the plane loads of coke back and landing them on the airstrip, and all. That was him. And he testified. Like he testified during the trial of Ollie North. Was like, "Yo, me right here, at the direction of Ollie North, right there."
That's the guy.
Yep.
I'm the guy.
He's
We're
the guy.
The guys.
Yep, we're the guys. So according to this documentary, they had a fucking raging party the night before all this went down, and brought all the dastardly dudes out to enjoy it. Riflemen, radio men, getaway pilots, drivers, false ID suppliers, everybody.
I want to be McLovin.
There was a guy named Chauncey who was a CIA agent and
a point guard for the Detroit Pistons.
And he was like the false documents guy for the CIA for a while. And he made, false documents for this guy and for that guy. And he was there with Charles Harrelson and this other guy. I can't remember his name, but he was like a physicist. And it was crazy because in the documentary, it shows him, he's got like jeans and a sport coat on and stuff like that. But he's got his collar popped and then the collar up on the sport coat. And I'm like, dude, is this guy in the 80s? Nah, man, this is the 60s. This guy's ahead of schedule. But he was looking super fucking cool. But the three of them got caught. Because after the shooting, they were told that there was a train car that they could go hide in. So they went and scoped it out, made sure everything was hunky-dory, took off after the shooting and went and hid in this train car. And they were he said they were sitting there in silence until the doors slid open. and there was about 25 cops with shotguns pointed in there, and they were like, "Get the fuck out!" And he said they went, "We're federal agents," and they were like, "We don't give a fuck." And so you can see there's a picture if you look it up, and they called them the Tramps because they pulled them out of the trains. But it's Charles Voigt Harrelson, this guy Chauncey whatever, and this third guy, and they're walking them into the Dallas PD. And in one of the pictures that was snapped as these guys are going by, you can see one of them has like a little radio earpiece with the thing that goes down to the collar and the shirt, you know? I mean, it's pretty, that part's pretty alleged in the picture. The quality that I saw, it wasn't that great. It could have just been some grain in the film. Okay. But that's the thing. So those guys got caught. Madeline Duncan Brown, LBJ's mistress and mother to his illegitimate son, testified that in attendance at the party the night before, J. Edgar Hoover and Clyde Tolson, his gay lover, the Brown Brothers from Brown Brothers Harriman, which was a bank that founded by Averell Harriman, son of E.H. Harriman, and financed war crimes during World War II. John Connolly, Cliff Carter, and Senator Joseph Yarborough. They stood to lose millions in lost defense contracts when the war never came to fruition based on Kennedy's policies.
They're like, damn it, why didn't we just war?
Yeah, come on. Less talky, more war.
More pew pew.
Right. Mayor of Dallas, Earl Cable, who was working with the CIA with his brother Charles Cable. Chase Manhattan Bank Chief John McCloy was there, because why not? Fun fact, McCloy was a Nazi and shared a box with Hitler at the 1936 Olympics.
Is that the Olympics where Hitler's all methed out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was him in the box next to Hitler. That was this guy. See, look, connections, man. We're making connections.
Yep. That's also when what's his face shit all over Germany.
Jackie, no, not Jackie.
Carl Lewis.
No, Carl Lewis was Apollo Creed. Dude, I'm so bad at history.
Yeah, apparently we both are. But you know what I'm talking about. What a great moment.
I do know.
History.
Absolutely. We'll all remember it fondly in a little bit. So Mafia representatives Carlos Mocello and Jacob Rubens.
Jesse Owens.
Jesse Owens.
My name is Jesse. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Ass. Name brother, and you can't even remember it.
I know, dude. I'm terrible.
Mafia representatives Carlos Mocello and Jacob Rubenstein. Tricky Dick Nixon's there. Oil Baron Harold Lafayette Hunt is there. The documentary said Amon G. Carter was there. Amon G. Carter founded the Dallas newspaper, but a quick Google search of his name shows that he died in 1955. So I'm guessing he wasn't at this party in 1963.
Or was he?
But I would venture.
Elvis didn't die. He just went home.
I would venture a guess that it's maybe a representative from the newspaper, because they do things like control the narrative. You gotta be able to control the information that gets out. So you get in bed with these guys.
And then as the information went down, it came back that it was this guy, Purple Monkey Dishwasher.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Malcolm Wallace was there. Remember him from before? The guy that killed the golfer and LBJ's sister?
I do.
LBJ, according to his mistress, came outside to greet her and was all kinds of excited. He was pissed off because he'd been embarrassed and swore it wouldn't happen again. He said, "After tomorrow, those Kennedys will never embarrass me again. That's no threat. That's a promise."
That sounds like some shit like an 8th grader says after like he gets his ass kicked by a 9th grader.
Why not just a half-drunk, super angry politician?
That's true too.
You know what I mean?
I'm just saying like the words and the way he's saying it just sounds so angsty.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the plan's in motion. There's really nothing that can stop it now other than complete and utter failure on the parts of literally everybody involved. The next morning, Kennedy landed at Love Field and was led to his limo by John Connolly, the Secret Service agent, and a Secret Service agent, Henry J. Rickber. He tried to pick up his position near the right rear panel of the limo that Kennedy was riding in. And in fact, I could probably look this up, but he's jogging along next to the limo, like holding onto the little handle or holding onto the fender. And the limo starts to pick up speed and pulls away from him. And you can see the guy in the limo behind him with all the other agents on it. he stands up and yells something over the windshield at the Secret Service agent, who turns around, puts his hands up, stops running after the limo, and is like, what? And as it drives off, he's like, why? Why?
Oh, like getting pulled off the detail.
Yeah, he was pulled away from...
Because he was standing in the line of fire?
He was pulled away from Kennedy's right-hand side. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what they said. Yeah. So, and you can clearly see it. It's in the famous video. He's... The fuck? The Secret Service were all gathered in the car behind Kennedy, offering pretty much no protection. Allegedly, the military protection in the crowd had been removed at the order of some of the high-ranking Joint Chiefs of Staff who were involved in the process. There are no Secret Service, police, or military snipers around on any rooftops. They're driving into a metropolitan area full of buildings and hiding places. I mean, anybody who's played fucking Call of Duty knows you play on Miami, you're getting killed from 6,000 different directions. Now you want to take the president and put him on a moving motorcade through the city? Like, here you go. It seems like a bad idea, especially because allegedly the Secret Service never gave the parade route to the people, to Dallas PD, so they couldn't effectively sweep the area.
I see.
So,
which would have been handy.
So yeah, that was strangely enough. Even though there are people literally packed onto the sidewalks all along the parade route, there's almost nobody, comparatively speaking, in the area where Kennedy was actually shot. Like if you watch the Zapruder, if you watch the footage of Kennedy driving through downtown Dallas, people are 10, 15 people deep on the sidewalk. I mean, they're from the street back to the building. The entire sidewalk is packed. And when the Zapruder footage starts and you see they're going down the street, there's maybe a few people on the side of the road. There's Umbrella Man over here with Orlando Bosch, and then there's the little girl that's running and stops when the first shot happens, and
then Babushka lady across the street.
Yeah, and there's all this stuff, but there's not really any. There's nobody there. It's not 10 deep where it could be 50 deep.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's nobody there, but there's nobody there to enforce it. It's just mysteriously empty.
Sure.
Mysteriously empty. There was a Cuban marksman named Eladio de Valle who was the first sniper in position in the Daltex building with Charles Nicoletti. They were in the Daltex building together. Let's see. I lost my spot.
No worries.
So yeah, with Milwaukee Phil Aldericio and a couple of other Cubans were guarding a broom closet that they were shooting out of in another building nearby. This was pretty much the established pattern. Radio man to communicate, a shooter and a backup shooter in case the first shooter missed, choked, or got cold feet. About starting World War III.
Yeah.
And nuclear, this time it's nuclear.
Coming to theaters this November.
Pretty much. And then they had guards outside. Richard Kane was the head of the police force and longtime friend of Charles Harrison. So he, in the book depository, Malcolm Wallace was on one side and Frank Sturgis was on the other end of the building, or Frank Fiorini, that guy. Both of them were actually spotted and identified. Malcolm Wallace was spotted by an old man with really thick glasses who was across the street.
Hans Moleman?
I mean, he's an old man with a gray crew cut. He looks just like this actor, and I can't remember.
Nobody's gay for Moleman.
I mean, this old guy,
would.
I might. But he basically was, he said he was across the street, renewing his driver's license or something like that. And he looked out the window and was like, well, wait a second. What's that guy doing? And the guy was out there with a rifle, leaning out the window, and he was like, man. So he got a good look at him, and then, all the commotion happened down below, and he gave his statement. He said, yeah, I saw him. He looked like this. Even so much as to say, the arms on his glasses were extra thick. He gave a pretty good.
He had it.
Yeah, and then when compared to, the artist's sketch, it's close. It's not a dead ringer for Malcolm Wallace, but it's close. There was another guy who said, yeah, there was a guy up there in this window, larger guy, which is Frank Fiorini. And he said, he had what looked to be a high-powered rifle because it had a large scope, or what looked to be a large scope in relation to the size of the rifle. So, this guy's using deductive reasoning to make his case for, I saw somebody over here, not over there. And he had this, and it looked like this, and I saw this, and used that as a reference for, like, you know what I mean? Telling you that he's got this.
Right.
I mean, so that's, something worth considering. I feel like I wouldn't discount that too much. Frank Sturgis on the other end with his Cuban guards, those guys also got spotted. And then this is kind of where the Zapruder film starts, or at least the edited version that we've all seen. The part that was removed shows the limo slowing down after the first shot, almost to a complete stop. Other people said it did stop completely, but it looks like it never really does stop, but it slows way down. Some people said in order for the Secret Service agent behind to run and catch up, but it slows down just long enough for Kennedy to get shot, and then it speeds up again. There was allegedly a painted line on the sidewalk there where if he's not hit by this point, we're stopping. Like, he has to be dead by this point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're fucked.
Wow.
Yeah. So, actually, there's a guy named Orville Nix who took video opposite Abraham Zapruder. You can actually see Abraham Zapruder in this guy's footage, but it's like that website or that subreddit, two Redditors, one cup or whatever, where people have photos of each other at random points. But yeah, he's got the video, and you can see, and the limo slows down, and then speeds away after Kennedy shot. So, to counter the issue of exploding the man's head with gunfire, they had 4 stages that they took up. Stage 1 was a 40-yard shot by Charles Nicoletti from the Daltex building. This was corroborated from, again, a couple of different documentaries. Bing, bang, boom, single shooter theory, except he missed. And he hit the top of the windshield, which ricocheted the bullet down the road under the triple overpass where it hit a curb, sending broken concrete into the air and scratching the face of an onlooker named James Tagg. And that's all documented. He got hit by, that's in the official Warren report. Mm-hmm. He got hit by exploding concrete from a bullet, and it scratched his face. Pictures, I guess. It's like, that's his story.
History, man.
Yeah. There's everybody's favorite, Umbrella Man. He gives the signal saying the shot missed. Like, he's still alive. We fucked up.
Come on.
So seeing the signal, 2 shooters fire from the front of the vehicle at approximately the same time, trying to time it so it sounds like one shot. Those shooters are Charles Harrelson and the other guy that was with Chauncey, who hid in the train car. There's also another theory on that a man named James Files did it, and he hit certain information kind of on the head, but I've got that in here later. But then I played you the clip of Charles Harrelson.
Yeah.
If you believe it was a single man, you're naive. Charles Harrelson's the one that hit JFK in the throat. So when you watch the Zapruder footage and you see JFK lunge forward like that, that's the shot that came through the windshield and it hit JFK in the throat. Now, in all these documentaries, they talk about the response team and the crash team at Parkland Hospital, how they did they kept calling it tracheostomy. And I was like,
It's probably just, wow.
Right. But tracheotomy. They did one of those. And they said they were trying to save his life. The same doctor that said he was trying to save his life also said he was missing about a 5-inch circumference chunk of his head right here where my hand is. So how are you going to, what life are you trying to save? We'll get to that too, because I've got that in here. So Harrelson hit JFK in the throat. A second marksman further up the road, up the hill in a culvert, is the one that put a hole in the windshield. It's a bit conflicted, but this is the grassy knoll shooter. Again, contention around this because one documentary claims it was James Files, and there were certain things he knew about the case that hadn't been public information. Like, he was in prison when he confessed. He was in prison on unrelated stuff when he confessed. But he was an alleged former mafia hitman. And he said he used to do stupid shit, and Charles Nicoletti would get angry at him. And he said one of the things he would do is, he would take the shell from the round and bite down on it and dent it. He says, call it a calling card, call it whatever. He said, and he goes, oh man, if Chucky knew that I did that day, he'd be so mad at me. Well, in 1982, somebody, and this interview with him came out in the 90s.
Yeah.
In 1982, somebody found a bullet shell near the fence at the grassy knoll, that had dents in the top and bottom that were forensically determined to be dental imprints.
Huh.
Also, there was a cloud of material in Kennedy's quote-unquote brain that from where the bullet had passed through, and it was determined to be mercury. Files said he used a mercury bullet. So there's there's information that he had that wasn't public knowledge.
Right.
But it doesn't prove that he was the second shooter.
Right. It proves that he might have gotten some information that was known by the second shooter.
Or it proves that he was there and maybe took some shots. Maybe his is the one that missed and hit the dirt on the other side by Babushka lady.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because she was standing there and the FBI told her, they were like, hey, like a fucking bullet hit like right here, 6 inches to your right. And they went over.
Babushka, by the way.
And they pulled it out of the ground and put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in their pocket, and it forgot to be checked into inventory or into evidence. So there was nothing. They didn't have that bullet anymore.
Forgot.
Oops. So I just think that's a little bit weird. But through all this, Kennedy's still alive. He's just been shot in the neck, and nobody really seems to notice. He's kind of held upright because he was wearing a back brace. The orders were basically that came over the radio: hit him with everything we've got. So over the next few seconds, they just unloaded because fucking you got to. You can't let him. What if he survives? You know what I mean? We're all fucked. So Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman described it as what sounded like a jet sonic boom, with all the bullets hitting the car at once, like all the supersonic.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, especially when you're like up in the mountains where it's real quiet and you shoot it. Like the crack of a bullet is crazy.
Well, and you got to imagine after the first shot.
Yeah.
The whole crowd probably just hushed. So the next 2 or 3 that you hear are going to be amplified. Frank Sturgis missed his shot and shot Governor Connolly in the ribs. At the same time, Eladio Del Valle hit Connolly in the wrist, and Nicoletti hit him in the thigh. So this guy, who's a part of the assassination plot, is sitting in front of him, which is a bold move.
Right.
But you trust your snipers. You trust these guys are the best of the best.
And who's the least likely to be involved in the guy in the seat across from the guy getting shot?
Who just got 5 inches of rib blown out and and lung tissue and shit like that, and got shot in the wrist and the thigh through the door. Like they were playing the footage super slow, and they're like, look, if you look right here, this is the moment that he gets shot in the chest. You can see the impact from the bullet blew his cheeks out, and it's a picture of him going, oh
shit.
And it's like, well, yeah, but you were plotting to kill the president, so fuck you.
Comment. Playing Overwatch.
Wait. Oh, yeah. Dude, it's... Yeah. And it's so... Yeah, exactly. Trusted his snipers and got hit 3 times. Like, fucking idiot. These are the best government snipers. These are the best mob snipers. These are the best international snipers that we could assemble.
Ow!
Yeah, fuck. Meanwhile, Kennedy's in the back only hit once.
Yeah.
And so, you know.
Never had that hurt.
Yeah, oops. So, you know, you get what you fucking deserve. Malcolm Wallace then struck Kennedy in the back, as was reported by the Secret Service agents in the second car. They said they saw one hit him in the back. So there was the hole here in the neck, above the necktie. And then there was the bullet hole. It was 5 inches below the collar and about 2 inches to the right of the spine. And it was only a few inches deep. There was it wasn't a through and through wound.
Like it hit something first and hit him.
No. Something went in and then was removed. Like subsequently pulled back out. So much so that one of the FBI agents who was there for the autopsy called back to headquarters and was like, "Hey, remember ice bullets? Did they get out? Do other people know about them yet? Because we've got an entrance wound with no exit wound and no material in the wound." And they were like, "No, it hasn't gotten out yet." And they were like, "Oh, okay, just making sure." So they never really had an explanation for that. But if you look at his jacket, it's there. I mean, the hole is clearly there in his jacket. But that's where they said Gerald Ford, I believe, is the one who changed the location of where the hole was. He said it wasn't here. It was actually up here, and it went in and came out above the necktie, and that's the one that came out above the necktie, hit Connolly, ricocheted through his body, and that's the magic bullet.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, fucking what? So his back brace kept him upright. Pretty much now is when Jackie begins to suspect something's up. And poor guy's been shot fucking twice in like the last 5 seconds. And then again, there was a sonic boom on the car. So I'm imagining she's probably a little hectic. Like she's probably a little scattered. John Connolly's all fucked up in the front seat, missing ribs and lung, bleeding from the back thigh and wrist. And there's a hole in the windshield. But the POTUS is still alive. So what do? They stop the limo and he gets shot. This is again where the alleged cut is in the Zapruder film where he slows down and then he gets shot and they cut that part out. Not 100% sure why you'd slow down. Because, I mean, even in the Zapruder film, you see him slow down. He doesn't stop, and they don't show you how slow he got, but he's slow.
Yeah.
Why would you slow down when your only job is to protect this guy right here? And you just heard what could be gunfire? And if you can't identify that as gunfire as a Secret Service agent, like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Even if it was just firecrackers, you should probably still just take off.
Yeah, just boogie. So maybe these people see the president at 40 miles an hour instead of at 12.
Yeah.
But Charles Harrison took the heat for firing from the grassy knoll, but the trajectory would have pushed Kennedy's head down and into Jackie's lap because of the angle that the shot came. Like it would have knocked him down and away instead of back towards the trunk. Which means the shot had to come from an upward angle, but he's at the lowest point. So the only thing lower than that would be down in the storm drain, which had an opening that opened up to an empty field 400 yards away. And it was just a storm culvert. Man in the storm drain. Well, so there was two guys involved in that side of it. A guy named Curtis Laverne Crayford, or they called him Larry Crayford. He worked at a place called the Carousel Club. I don't know if you remember, but Carousel Club was owned by Jacob Rubenstein. And this
Nixon's gangster.
Nixon's gangster. And this guy's
Look at me.
Yeah, look at you, dude. This guy's a possible CIA asset. So the Carousel Club, again, owned by Jacob Rubenstein, he changed his name. He changed his name to Jack Ruby. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
That's the man. So again, he told people that Larry's name was Lee Harvey Oswald until Lee Harvey Oswald actually showed up. Until he was like, yo, I'm Lee Harvey Oswald. And they were like, no, that's Lee Harvey Oswald. And Jack Ruby's like, shut the fuck up. This is Lee Harvey Oswald. And I have a personal theory about that. Again, this part right here that I'm going to this isn't proven. But this is my personal opinion and my theory, is that Lee Harvey Oswald was not the man's actual name. It was a code name. Like James Bond is not James Bond. James Bond is the code name.
Right.
Lee Harvey Oswald was the code name. So they had this guy, Larry, that they were going to use in this plot. He was supposed to be the guy. He was supposed to be the one. So they introduced him to everybody as Lee Harvey Oswald. This is the identity we can burn. And then they find this other guy, and they're like, no. This is the guy. And so he becomes Lee Harvey Oswald, and that's why there's so many people, because there was a few different documentaries that I've been watching documentaries on this shit for like straight up years, but like a week.
Yeah.
And I'm going a little nuts, and I appreciate you bearing with me. But there were so many people using Lee Harvey Oswald's name before this, and I think that's why. And again, that's my personal theory, is that it's a code name, and they're putting it out there as like, this is the identity that we're going to get rid of, so that Curtis or Larry Curtis's fucking parents don't get wise to the fact, like, oh, well, no, he was, no. It's an ID that has no backstory.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. We create it.
Okay.
So that's my theory on that. And when Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested, he had two sets of ID on him. One that read Lee Harvey Oswald and one that read James Heidel. So potentially a real name, fake name situation.
That's a dumb thing to carry them both with you, though.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is. But it also, he could have been set up like that. Jack Allen Lawrence is the one who was actually underground and did the firing. He ran back down the tunnel again, probably about 400 yards and up an embankment. Showed up at his place of employment, a Lincoln Mercury dealership. Quote, pale, sweaty, muddy, and out of breath. So, And it was like a sunny day in Dallas.
I'm ready to sell some cars, boss.
Yeah, well, they said he'd been sick, and so like he went in to the bathroom, was sick, and then came out, and they were like, "Go home," and so he went home. But they were like, "That's fucking weird." So they called the Dallas PD, who came out and then like checked the situation. So there's like history of this guy being investigated by the police department for being sick at work. At the crime scene, amidst all the chaos, there's a few people actually walking calmly or sitting and talking. Umbrella Man and Orlando Bosch sitting there on the curb, real nonchalant about everything that had happened. Again, Orlando Bosch with the walkie-talkie and stuff like that. It's just strange. Harrelson and his associates, again, discovered it hiding in boxcars on the train tracks, waiting for it to go until it was canceled by like the railroad guy. He was like, nothing's moving out of this area.
Yeah.
And they were like, fuck. Oops.
This was the plan.
Yeah. All in all, 8 shooters, 16 shots in 4 stages over the course of like 10 to 15 seconds, which is a lot more than what you would say you heard or anything like that. But if they're timed well, you know, it could be what you hear is, instead of hearing a gunshot and then it echo and then come back, maybe what you're hearing is gunshot, gunshot, gunshot.
Yeah.
And who knows? But
not me.
Yeah, I sure don't. And I mean, after all this, I really fucking don't. It really irritates me. Charles Harrelson, again, discovered in there 18 shots, or 8 shooters, 16 shots, 4 stages. A declassified FBI memo showed that George Herbert Walker Bush was in fact in Dallas on 11/22/63, staying at a Sheraton hotel. Remember before we mentioned like having control of the body, like you'd have to have control of that after the death. There were 2 FBI agents who were tasked with meeting the body in Maryland and observing the autopsy, and they both noted that the body showed signs of surgery pre-autopsy. So unless JFK had some like major facial reconstructive surgery, a lot of stuff was out of place for it being pre-autopsy. Signs of incisions and stitches and things like that.
Slammy DeVito redeemed, changed the lights.
Yeah. Hold on, I gotta.
There's a remote around here somewhere.
What color? Taking all comers. Well, most of them. Tell me what color you want, and I will make it happen. I meant to fix that too, where you got to put a color in there, but I didn't. So again, they noted that the body showed signs of surgery pre-autopsy, meaning somebody between Parkland Hospital and Dallas, Texas, where he was placed in a somewhat ceremonial bronze casket, and when his body arrived in Bethesda, Maryland, in a gray basic transport casket inside a body bag, which he wasn't before. Completely missing all of his clothes. Somebody had done surgery on him. Weird, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Here, Slammy, we'll go with a nice purple for you.
Oh,
set the mood.
Purple.
So, interplastic surgeon, CIA asset John Melvin Leggett, talk show host and friend of E. Howard Hunt and CIA asset G. Gordon Liddy, and the handsome Dallas PD officer in the wrong place at the wrong time, Jefferson Davis Tippit. J.D. Tippit was chosen because of his remarkable resemblance to JFK. I have a couple of pictures I've got saved. Let me see if I can find them real quick.
Tippit.
Yeah. I mean, he was a handsome guy. He had very JFK qualities. Let's see. Do that and that. Move this here. Hit this button. Here, I think. Yeah. So that's J.D. Tippit.
Okay.
So he's a handsome guy.
Sure.
And then there he is intersected with JFK. So they do share somewhat of a resemblance. Apparently, at least close enough for them to do some hasty plastic surgery at 30,000 feet while Air Force 2 leapfrogged Air Force 1 and beat him back to Bethesda to unload the body. So CIA asset G. Gordon Liddy allegedly gunned down J.D. Tippit. The goal was to shoot him in the head once from behind, killing him, and then they would do the hasty plastic surgery, swap the bodies. Now we've got our single shooter theory, where it was one shot in the back of the head. Here's the autopsy that proves it. Here's the bullet hole in the back of the head. Here's the path it traveled through. We can show all that stuff. G. Gordon Liddy took a little creative license. Oh, thanks, bro. I appreciate you subscribing. Get some emotes with that. That's awesome. So G. Gordon Liddy took some creative license and shot this man 3 times in the torso, and then once he was on the ground, shot him in the head. So now the body doesn't match up. Now they've got to do all kinds of creative shit. Now they've got to do like a lot, basically just a lot. So Tippit was shot in the right temple again, as well as 3 in the torso, 1 in the upper right side, 1 in the middle, and like down here, and then 1 in the lower left side. So he had like 3, like in a nice little triangle.
Doesn't sound like a single shooter.
Right. They were all about 8 inches apart, but the bullets were removed from his body in the ambulance when he arrived at the Methodist hospital. He didn't have any bullets in his body. Again, like how JFK had the one hole, but no bullet in it. Again, and that's the one that everybody says fell out on the stretcher. The one that was in pristine condition, but it couldn't have been if it had ricocheted through.
Right. Through possibly 2 people's bodies.
Right.
Yeah.
So J.D. Tippit was pronounced dead on arrival at the Methodist Hospital, but his body was moved to Parkland, where Kennedy was. Why on earth would you move a body to a hospital that's literally dealing with the death of a president? Like,
I can't think of a...
They've got to be probably the biggest media circus on the planet right now, and you want to take and move a body there. Unless you were trying to use the chaos to your advantage. So say you take the body of J.D. Tippit to the airport, load it into Air Force 2, which is now empty because the vice president's on Air Force 1 being sworn in. And they made that mandatory. They made the swearing in mandatory. Even poor Jackie had to be there. And we've all seen the picture of LBJ standing there and everybody crowded around him and Jackie Kennedy on his left and Lady Bird behind him.
Yeah.
That was...
Jackie, is still wearing the pink suit with blood on it.
Yeah, and it was mandatory. So for 5 minutes while he's being sworn in on Air Force 1, JFK's body's unguarded in this bronze casket on Air Force 2. I don't know how much time you need to move it from one box to another, but
window, huh?
That's the window. So
they start the swearing in process, and all of a sudden you're doom 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 doom.
Tom Cruise drops down, catching sweat.
Sorry, wrong place.
Oh, goes right back up. So again, waiting aboard Air Force 2 was John Leggett, who immediately began plastic surgery on Tippit's face and head to resemble JFK, allegedly. The idea was to make it look as consistent as they could with a shot from behind. So it could have been avoided if G. Gordon Liddy could have followed instructions and shot him through the back of the head like he was supposed to. But they fucked it all up. So...
You didn't kill this guy right.
Well, I mean, you had fucking one job.
Yeah.
Like, literally, granted it's an important job, but you had fucking one job.
Right.
So Leggett essentially rebuilt Tippit to look like JFK while Air Force 2 leapfrogged Air Force 1 in the air and landed first. The whole process was hurried and slapdashed. The coffin that arrived in D.C. and was unloaded in front of everybody, like on the news and everything, was in fact empty. The other 2 bodies that were helicoptered into the destination, but they were so afraid of being found out that there was a military general who refused to leave the casket, thinking that there was still a body in the casket. He refused to leave, and they were like, "We don't have any more room in the car." And this is a military general in the 60s. Like, tough man's man. He's like, "No, I'm riding on your lap." So he rode on a dude's lap all the way to the hospital because he refused to leave the body alone.
Fair enough. Loyalty.
It's something.
Or sticky fingers.
Yeah. So once at the hospital, there was more manufactured chaos as there were decoy ambulances that paraded media as well as military, FBI, and CIA officials on wild goose chases around the hospital grounds.
Gotta have it.
I fully support that.
Yeah.
I do, like, of this entire story, that's the one part where I was like, you know what? Fucking good. Like, lead them around for a while. Fuck them.
It reminds me of the story about how Michael Jackson, like, they always said, like, I don't even know if it's true, but I always, like, remember hearing that he traveled with a double and, like, send the double in through the back door and he'd just walk in through the front kind of stuff. Because it was like, well, I'm too famous to do this. So I'm just going to send a guy in, like, a red leather jacket who kind of looks like me, and then I'll just walk in. And then I'll just walk in normal through the front door.
That's a fucking good Michael Jackson impression.
Thank you.
Somebody clip that. That was good. That was real good. Yeah, so they capitalize on the chaos again, you know, and make it work. So they did manage to botch the important part. They left Tippett's body in the dull gray casket inside the body bag. So anybody paying attention would notice that it was in the wrong box. At one point during the autopsy, after noting the lack of brain in the cadaver and not knowing that actually JFK was in the next room over and they were operating on JD Tippett, somebody brought in like a little cart with a sheet over it, and everybody, like, in the hallway when people were questioned about it, they were like, "What's that? What's that?" And they were like, "It's just a dead baby." And they were like,
It's
"Oh,
not
okay."
JFK.
It wasn't JFK. It was a little lump. And when they got it into the room and uncovered the sheet, it was a brain. And they were told it was JFK's brain. And it had wounds consistent with a single shot to the back of the head. So now there's a third body involved. And the brain was weighed and a couple of notes made, and then they put it in formaldehyde, destroying any maybe forensic evidence that could possibly be there.
Perfect.
Yeah. Good job, guys. Good fucking job, guys. So, again, at one point during the autopsy, after noting the lack of brain in the cadaver and not knowing that actually JFK was in the next room over, a brain on a tray showed up, wheeled in, weighed, and placed in formaldehyde, like, immediately. So long evidence. Speaking of so long dignity for the guy performing the autopsy when he said he touched the hole in the back of the head, pieces of the skull fell away, which wasn't possible unless it was an exit wound. But the guy on the airplane doing the plastic surgery had rebuilt it to look like an entrance wound. So he's, like, piecemealing skull fragments together to make it look like an entrance wound. And I mean, they said he used, like, plaster of Paris, he used wax, he used, like,
Jesus,
things that you would, he's trying to paper mache this guy's head back together.
How is he, like, thinking? I don't know. It seems that'd be, like, such bad moves because you're sending it to more medical professionals.
But they're in control of the body. Allegedly. That's the theory, is that the person that's in control of the body is going to be on their side. They can be persuaded to toe the line. And so they, after performing the autopsy, they said when it showed up, yes, it looked like an entrance wound. So they noted, yes, the bullet entered from the back of the head. After it started to fall away and stuff like that, they were like, well, wait a second. This is an exit wound. But they don't have an entrance wound on the front because of all the plastic surgery that's been done. They don't have an entrance wound. So they've got an entrance wound and an exit wound on the back side of the head. So the report said that the bullet went in the back of his head, made a U-turn, and came back out. That was right there. They were like, that's his official report. He signed that shit and was like, here, this bullet made a U-turn in the man's head.
Trust me, this is how it works.
Science, bitch. Cue Grandpa Simpson walking in, hanging up his hat, and walking right back out. Like, just... Frank Sturgis or Frank Fiorini, he even spoke candidly about body switching. He said, yeah, we switch bodies. Like, the CIA switches bodies. You can't just leave a corpse. You can't leave your evidence. You get somebody else that, a lot easier to get to, and you make it look dirtier and like somebody else did it. And we do that all the time. It's standard operating procedure. According to Bobby Kennedy at the funeral, he said he goes, that doesn't look anything like him. Not like it's eerie to see him look like this, because he said that doesn't look anything like him. Even Jackie said, that isn't Jack. That looks like something you'd find at Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. She said that's not him. But what are you gonna do? Call the guy a liar? Yeah. So within an hour they had the weapon. They had the first weapon they found. They were like, oh look, we found this Mauser, and it's the gun, and we found 2 bullets. And then later on, they were like, well, actually, it was this Mannlicher Carcano, and we found 3 bullets. So the story's already changing.
Yeah.
But they caught him like 45 minutes after he was arrested for slipping into a movie without paying, but it was allegedly because he was supposed to have been the one who shot J.D. Tippit. So he was accused of killing Kennedy, accused of killing Tippit, and then took off his jacket and went into a movie theater without paying, and that's what he got arrested for. Was going into the movie theater without paying.
Interesting.
Yeah. The chain of evidence for all the stuff that was found in the book depository had been broken. They said Oswald had wrapped the gun in brown paper and used that to carry it in, unsuspicious like, making it look like it was something for what he was doing there. They had the paper. It showed no signs of being creased, as if it was folded around a rifle. Like no matter which way they turned it, it didn't fold around the rifle like it was. He was spotted at the building at 12:25 by somebody there, which was the time of the shooting. Later on, that same witness said, actually, it was like 12:15 when I saw him. It wasn't 12:25. It was earlier. He was there. He was there 10 minutes ahead of time, enough time to get set up. For what? I don't know. They tested his hands and face for gunpowder, and it all came back negative. As if he hadn't fired a gun. And while being paraded into jail, he said he was being denied legal counsel. He also claimed his innocence and said he wasn't made aware of why he was being arrested and he was never charged with anything. They said, "Do you have a lawyer?" And he says, "Well, no, I haven't been formally charged with anything." They didn't tell him why they arrested him.
Huh.
Yeah, he wasn't read his rights, so it would have been a mistrial had he continued to be detained. And not being given his Miranda rights, not telling him why he was being detained or anything like that, it would have fucked up the whole legal process. So, I mean, really, they shit the bed on killing him. They shit the bed on the body switch. They shit the bed on the autopsy. It only makes sense that they'd shit the bed wrapping up loose ends.
Bro, they're straight up not having a good time.
They're not. And they're parading him around in front of, from press conferences and from jail cells and around and shit like that. And in a room of fucking 75 or 45 police officers. This guy's handcuffed in the middle of all of them. And Jacob Rubenstein, or Jack Ruby, steps out and one-shots this guy in the gut. And he goes down. So, that seems, obviously it's weird. Obviously it's weird for everybody involved who said, well, and this is 2 days after the event. This is 2 days after Kennedy's been killed. His killer's killed. Oh, his alleged killer's killed. Who's got FBI ties, CIA ties, Russian ties? I mean, he's literally, like, unless he's the most interesting man on the planet and actually real life Sterling Archer, like, I mean, it could be possible. It absolutely could be possible. But this man would be a triple fucking agent. So anyway, the alleged plastic surgeon who did the body switching, he came into about $2 million. Used it to finance a whole new lifestyle, new house, new car, new wife, new vices, including playing poker with guys like David Ferry, who was a CIA pilot. He was later killed after a botched armed robbery and buried, but his second wife said that it couldn't have been him because the guy that was buried had a mustache. She hadn't seen him. And then he turned up dead. And she said the guy that was buried had a mustache. And she said John couldn't grow a mustache, like, to save his life. So she was like, that can't be him. So the body switcher got body switched. And it was in Vegas where he was killed. So it's weird. It's weird considering Vegas is known for being a mafia built and run city. During the Watergate scandal, E. Howard Hunt found himself nicked and serving 33 months. He called Richard Nixon. Said he wanted $2 million, or he was going to start talking about his role in the Kennedy assassination. Dean Birch, Nixon's presidential aide, said when George Herbert Walker Bush heard about this, he, quote, broke out in assholes and shit himself to death. And I fucking love that.
Yeah, you text us that yesterday.
He broke out all over in assholes and shit himself to death. I'm going to work it into my everyday life as much as possible.
Perfect.
David Ferry, like we just talked about, and Eladio Del Valle were murdered minutes apart to stop them from talking during the Jim Garrison investigation. Charles Harrelson and Phil Aldericio were both murdered in prison. Charles Nicoletti and George de Morenchette were both murdered at the same time to keep them from testifying to the House Committee on Assassinations. When George de Morenchette's body was found, he had a card in his wallet from George Poppy Bush which is George H.W. Bush, and it said Zapata oil or Zapata petroleum on it.
Fun.
Yeah. Johnny Roselli was murdered before he could testify to the House Committee on Assassinations. He was found in an oil drum in Miami. Malcolm Wallace and Lee Bowers were murdered the same way. They were both forced off the road and had their heads smashed into the steering wheel until they died. Sam Giancana.
Ow.
It makes me think of, what movie was that where like the guy's sitting there at the steering wheel and he walks up behind him and he smacks his head into the wheel and it honks the horn. Meep. I don't know. I think about that every time somebody hits the steering wheel and it fucking makes me laugh. Sam Giancana, the mob boss who said that he was in charge of all this stuff, he was scheduled to testify to the House Committee on Assassinations, which was putting together. It was like the follow-up to the Warren Commission. They did the Warren Commission. Nobody was fucking satisfied with it. LBJ even said, "Nah, man, they did a fucking bad job," and he's the one who put it together. And they were like, that's shit. So they put this committee together, and it was to investigate Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. And so those were the assassination plus assassination attempts on Fidel Castro and other people around that time. So Sam Giancana was scheduled to go talk to them as well. Somebody walked into his house, shot him in the back of the head while he was making sausage, like he was cooking sausages. They put the gun to get to the back of his head and pulled the trigger, dropped him to the ground, put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger, then put the gun underneath his chin and pulled the trigger 5 more times. They completely destroyed this man's head. And then just left, like packed up and left. Left the oven on and everything, or the stove on and everything. Didn't even have any decency for that.
Just burnt the bangers?
Yeah. So it seems as if some people can toe the line after seeing what happens if you don't. There was an interview with the ER doctor that saw Kennedy, and his story doesn't line up with a lot of things that we've talked about tonight, and other things that I saw in other documentaries. One documentary made the claim that Jackie wouldn't leave her husband's side. She refused to leave the ER. She sat there and she was holding on to his left foot, like just keeping her hand on him. She couldn't. And who am I to say?
Right.
Like, that's a fucking traumatic experience. Nobody's ready for that. This doctor said that when he walked up, he was looking down the hall toward trauma room 1 and 2, just past the ER. And there she is sitting in a folding chair in the hallway in her pink dress, all bloody and looking real distraught. He said, I had to force myself to keep walking that direction. And the interviewer says, well, what do you mean you had to force yourself to keep walking? So he explains his answer, and then he says it again. Looking down the hallway past trauma rooms 1 and 2 in the ER, I could see her sitting there in a folding chair in her pink dress covered in blood, looking real distraught. Well, why are you giving the same story verbatim twice? That sounds a little rehearsed, my guy. And he kept saying stuff like, and he was just giving like overly specific details that didn't pertain to anything, but seemed to flesh out the story.
Yeah.
So that didn't sit right to me.
Too good of a lie.
Yeah, just like when you make up a lie and you just keep adding details because you want it to sound convincing, so you make up a bunch of stuff. Were you out last night? Well, yeah, I was outside for a little bit, and this car drove by, and we saw this, and that's how we know we were there.
It was a blue car. I think they were listening to country music, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so your alibi is overly built. So again, according to this doctor, she's sitting in a folding chair in the hallway. Like, that seems pretty unbefitting of a first lady who's been severely traumatized in the last in the last 20 minutes. In the last 20 minutes, this has happened because he said that. So this doctor that they interviewed, he said Kennedy was gasping and had, quote, good cardiac activity when he arrived in the ER.
His head was exploded.
He also said he was missing a 5-inch chunk of his brain and skull. You can't have it both ways. They said they attempted life-saving techniques, including a tracheostomy, and it's a 10-minute. I checked on Google Maps. Right. So currently, right now, it's a 10-minute drive from Dealey Plaza to Parkland Hospital, going the speed limit. I'm assuming this Cadillac doesn't handle like a dream.
Right.
Or this Lincoln that he was driving, or they were driving, doesn't handle like a dream. So assume, even going fast, probably 10 minutes to get to the hospital. How long does it take you to get inside the hospital? Once you know, everybody knows what just happened.
Right.
It's been broadcast live to the world. Everybody knows what happened. So now you've got traffic that you've got to deal with. You got a dead president and a Secret Service agent laying on the trunk of the car. You got 2 Secret Service agents in the front seat, a governor who's been shot all to shit, his wife, who relatively nothing happened to, and the first lady, and you're hauling ass through traffic with all this shit happening, brain matter falling off the trunk into traffic and shit. Like, you get there. It's how many minutes does it take for you to get inside and get a room? You can tell me that for, say, 12 to 15 minutes, JFK is alive through all this after taking a shot through the throat and one to the head?
Yeah.
I mean, I really fucking doubt it. I really doubt it. But on the other hand, Lee Harvey Oswald got gut shot once and bled out. They said, because they called the same doctor in for that. He was at home. And they called him in and they said, we need you to come in. The man who shot Kennedy has been shot. So they brought in the same ER doctor. He said he had, quote, sustained such a loss of blood and was in such deep shock he had done irreversible damage to his heart. So this guy who got gut shot lost so much blood he did irreversible damage to his heart and was a lost cause. But this other guy who had a 5-inch chunk of, important shit missing was breathing and had good cardiac function.
I'm going to guess no.
I mean, having a hard time with it. So in addition to saying this again, like I said, he goes into too much detail. He mentions things like the first lady saying, I had to force myself to walk down the hall, and just repeating the same lines over and over like he'd rehearsed them. But yeah, it's so I'm pretty much done with Kennedy now for like 50 weeks. And then this shit will happen again. But ultimately, I do encourage people to do your own research, think objectively about the whole thing, watch the documentaries, read the books, use your brain. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in the sauce. I know I definitely did this week. Sometimes when you're looking at something so closely, you forget to look at the big picture and think, sometimes you get so honed in on, well, it had to be Lee Harvey Oswald, that you forget that it could have been all these other people. It could have been this whole cabal of people who all had valid reasons, as we discussed. I mean, whether it cost you billions of dollars, your way of life, it cost you your profession, what you spent your entire life doing. These people have reasons for doing. I mean, granted, not very good ones for what they did, but these people have reasons for doing the things that they did. So do your own research, figure it out for yourself, because especially with something as deep and ingrained as this is in American culture, there's got to be the bluff and the double bluff and the triple bluff and the double blind bluff. And I mean, you look at the movie JFK, that's not what happened at all.
Right.
That's a Hollywood production. So don't take that. But it's put out there to plant the seed of distrust. And so I could be victim of all that. I could have been reading a bunch of bunk fucking information, and it really was James Files who just took the second shot, put it through the windshield, hit Kennedy in the head with the mercury bullet, bit it, dropped it in the grass, and split. Mm-hmm. Bing, bang, boom, see you next Tuesday. Don't say see you next Tuesday. Wait.
Bing, bang, boom, see you next Tuesday.
Don't say see you next Tuesday.
Don't tase me, bro.
Also,
down where your nuts hang.
LBJ ordering pants. It's like riding a wire. I know I need to get that on there. Sometimes I may be victim to bad information. You may be victim to bad information, but try and do the research. Try and think critically about some of this stuff. All in all, like I said, do your homework. Wait for 2039 when the rest of the documents are quote unquote declassified.
Yeah, they'll just have huge black bars.
Yeah. I mean, well, in theory, everybody who was involved should be dead by then.
Yeah.
So, and that's pretty much what they wait for. That's like their statute.
Fingers crossed.
So that's all for tonight. I hope you enjoyed me going off the fucking rails about JFK. I know I talked super fast. I know I threw a lot of information out there. If you have questions about this stuff and you want to know more, message me. I'm at hellagregLIVE everywhere. Go to hellagregLIVE.com. You can email me through there. There's a puzzle on there that you have to go you can go decode and win some. I think I have stickers as the prize for that. It doesn't say on there because that's part of the mystery.
Ooh.
But a little sticker pack from the merch store. So, go on there, follow the rules. It's on the website. If you can't find it, maybe puzzles aren't for you. Paul, thank you for moderating comments. I know I've seen you come through a couple of times, I think. Thank you to F in Wisconsin for re-upping your sub. Das Koopa, thank you. I appreciate it. It means a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed. Jesse, thank you for being here. Thank you for moderating chat. Thank you for telling me things that show up that I miss.
I do my best.
Thank you for being here to play along. Thank you for tolerating me for the last week, yelling things at you, texting you at strange hours, talking about body switch. I know it's never a good sign getting a text message that says, how do you feel about body switching?
And then we had to clarify which body switching that we were talking about.
Yeah, not celebrities coming back as clones, but actual real life body switching of dead corpses. So we've got that going. Again, tell everybody where they can find you.
PerfectlyCromulentJesse.com or CromulentJesse on some of the social medias.
Easy fucking peasy. Again, find me, hellagregLIVE.com, at hellagregLIVE on all social media. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Bing, bang, boom. See you next Tuesday.
Don't say see you next Tuesday.
Nah, do it. See you next Tuesday.
This has been another presentation from Super Network.